We have fans now.
I look ridiculous.
No, it makes you look official.
You just look like a man wearing headphones.
I think men wearing headphones look
All right, theme song has played.
We're on the
I
end.
like that. So now the theme song is done and we're all just sitting there quiet.
Now we have nothing.
Respectfully.
I mean,
That's
usually
right.
we're just talking over the theme song, and then the episode starts in the middle of a conversation. So
I really like that though. That's the kind of vibe that I try to engender.
All of these little things like this that we do are also helpful in case future employers ever start sneaking around.
Who's
Terra
Patera
bread.
bread?
Yes. Thank you for
That is
putting
rude.
that joke out there.
Why did my video go away?
I don't know.
I guess I was saying something too true.
I was gonna say I hope to never have a future boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also hope, but I'm planning, for
No bosses.
the worst.
No masters. No gods.
I'm some gods. Some gods are cool.
Yeah, I'll guess we could take some gods. I'll take Poseidon.
Oh wait, no. Let me talk to you about Poseidon, my friend. You will hate Poseidon. Poseidon's the worst one. Asshole horse god.
He's a holdover, right?
Resident atheist.
Well, what do you mean by holdover?
Isn't he like an old dude that they make Zeus's brother, but whose cult is kind of going out of fashion?
But well, no, his cult stays in Big Fat. He's a horse god because he's empire. So like he's a horse god, the horse god of the Indo-European horse lords, and he becomes an ocean god because when they hit the ocean, they're like, fuck, now we need boats to continue our empire.
Seahorses.
Seahorses.
Oh.
He's like Aquaman.
He is like Aquaman, but he wants to take your land. That's the whole point of Poseidon, is go get that land. So I don't like him.
You still like it, Tim, huh?
You've changed my mind.
You like that kind of shit, Tim?
He's
My
You like
whole
it?
worldview is turned upside down.
Look, just because Poseidon's a rise and grinder doesn't mean you gotta hate on it.
He's relentlessly mad at
He's
Odysseus.
getting that bread.
Let's get that bread.
Isn't he the whole thing that is vexing Odysseus?
Yeah, Odysseus insults him, and so he's after Odysseus.
So, yes.
That makes sense that the sea is the bad guy in that story.
The clever man loses like 20 years of his life to just having made Poseidon mad, huh?
That's
Right.
what those Athenians love, though, right? Athenians love a hero that's insulted one god, so that god just fucks them up.
He has a good time though on his journey. He
Yeah.
he has
There are
plenty
some-
of good experiences.
There are some stretches where he's living in bliss with a sorceress.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. He falls in love like 8 times.
Could be worse.
Yeah. He also does get everyone who fucks with him. He gets them back.
Circe is Medea's aunt. I've been really into drawing the connections between the different stories, and it's awesome how they're all 5 families over the course of a couple hundred years. 3 generations of
Connor,
families. What?
You should read the book. I think it's called Circe. It's kind of like, I don't know if it's not a YA novel, but it has vibes of that. But
I've been reading a lot of YA.
I have that book. I picked it up at a thrift store, but I haven't cracked it. But
It's
I heard that
fun.
it's good.
It's good. But it's like, she's like, oh, my fucking dad. And it's like, whatever the god is. And she's like, my fucking dad is like this, and like all the fucking nymphs are always like this. And they don't get me. Nobody fucking gets me. Because I'm like scary or something. And then like
So she's a goth.
Yeah, she like bones Odysseus for a long time, and she's like, well, whatever, She has this whole thing with Hermes where he's like just a dick all the time, but she's like, well, like, yeah, Hermes sucks, I know, but he's back, I'll have sex with him, fine.
I'll check it out.
than her.
I think I heard about that book or I'd already picked it up, but then I heard something about it in reference to Pure Nessie, that Susanna Clarke book that I read a few months ago.
Oh, what is that? I've heard of that.
Oh, it's awesome. It is my favorite book of 2020.
Whoa.
And I mean, I maybe the only 2020 book I actually read.
Oh, Susanna Clarke is
But it's also my favorite book that I read in 2020. So
Susanna Clarke is.
She did Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Yeah, I just got that one. I've never read it. I just got it.
I only read that book at the Mount Royal Tavern.
That book rules. It is so good.
The television show, I couldn't get into.
Oh, I really enjoyed. Actually, Madison really liked the television show.
I think if I had read the book, I'd be able to follow it easier.
I mean, Madison got really into it without having read the book, but the book is great. It's like it's a very like sort of like a Dickens Austen mashup with fairies in it, and it goes. It's like really, really good. So, but Pure Nessie is very different from it and also great. And those are her only 2 novels.
Cool.
How old is she? Today.
She's in her 50s, I think.
Nice.
Good age.
Yeah.
She writes very slowly, and I think her like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was her first book, and I don't think it came out until she was in her mid-40s, something like that.
Big respect.
Yeah.
You know what I didn't know? Harold Budd never released a record until he was 40.
Alan Rickman didn't start acting until he was 40.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Not at all, or like acting in movies.
I think he didn't break big. I think he was
so
doing
had been,
other
like,
things.
An actor.
Okay.
I can't say if he might have been in some community theater or something.
Yeah, something.
Which, think about being in community theater with Alan Rickman.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Alan Rickman in our town.
Right.
Alan Rickman in Concrete Island.
I don't think any other community theater has ever put on Concrete Island.
No, considering Nick wrote it for us to do. But imagine Alan Rickman in a Mercury Theater production.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Why don't you just call him up?
Well, now we can. Once you die, you become much more accessible to calls.
See, there you go.
I've been reading a lot of necromancy lately. Necromancy.
Necromancy?
Yeah.
Necromancy is awesome. It's necromancy now.
Sorry.
So good.
It's one of those words that, like, when I was little, before I talked to anybody about that word, my mind had settled on how it was going to be pronunciated.
I think it's
You were
reasonable.
like deciding
That's a
about
reason.
necromancy when you were little.
Yeah.
Have you met Connor? His first book was like the Necronomicon.
I did get a copy of the Necronomicon early on.
It was Ed Emberley's big book of Necronomicon.
Oh man, have you guys seen the picture that's been going around of Edward Gorey?
The person?
Yeah, it's like him walking around New York City in this giant flamboyant fur coat with this huge beard, and another couple of people like giving him side eye.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
Makes
he
sense.
looks like more than you could have hoped.
It was taken recently?
No.
I want to see
No,
this
not
picture.
recently.
It's just going around.
Pictures bring us history through time.
Is it? He have a sweater on, and like what looks like a giant safety pin hung on his neck?
Maybe I haven't been able to get past the coat and his fantastic Lenin-like face.
Yeah. Huh. I
But
bet he
he's
does.
hot.
great. He's totally hot, I think. I'd do it to him.
Somebody
Was he
would,
into
for sure.
ladies or men or everything in between?
Corpses.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter as long as it's dead. And not too recently.
The original necromancer, Edward Gorey.
Necromancer.
Guys,
It's because he's romancing the dead.
I think there's a different word for that too.
I feel bad about myself now.
Oh, come on.
Why? Because Edward Gorey has sex with dead people, you feel bad about yourself?
No.
Well, like it makes you feel lazy, like you're not pushing yourself hard enough.
I have had enough sex with dead people.
On that note,
This was a hell of a chapter. I loved it.
yeah, it's
I love
like
this chapter.
I do. I love this chapter.
it's funny that they do the like it's like his training montage or whatever, but it's just at the very end of this book.
Yeah. Well, because you know, there's 3 more, so I feel like
Right.
all the stuff that happens in this chapter is like you don't even know what's coming. We are this kind of movie when you get the next book.
I guess in the overarching story, it makes sense for it to happen at this point. But it is just funny for that to be the last like big scene of the book.
It's a big cliffhanger.
Oh, I'm at swords now.
And Crane, all the stuff with Crane is so exciting. Like
The crane thing seems like it should be like the stinger, like the post-credit scene.
Yeah. It's funny because this is stuff like this idea that something is going on and someone has an agenda that the narrator has completely missed. That's all throughout Long Sun. And then here it's showing up explicitly and as like a spy plot. And I feel like that's so neat that Wolfe is like he's doing his shtick, but he's got a whole new place to stick it.
There were definitely a couple of points in this chapter, like the point in this chapter where I felt like, oh, Jean's having a good time.
Yeah.
Was when Auk is explaining the Needler.
Yeah.
Where it's like clearly Jean has thought so much about this weapon and is really excited to explain how it works. And Auk is just getting to do all of it.
I feel like in that moment too, he's saying to the reader, like, none of the shit is loosey-goosey. Like, none of the things, technology, any of the things in this book that you're seeing don't have a Needler explanation behind them. I got all that shit, dudes.
Yeah.
And you'll be lucky if you meet a character who knows it, you know?
This part is like when Prince just starts like ripping on the guitar and he's just like
That's the best analogy.
Yeah, I also felt like it was I didn't know if this was like Jean making a little joke, but when Auk is taking him to Xiphos or however you pronounce his name.
I say Ziphius.
Ziphius. That's what I said in my
So
head.
he's taking him to
Swordfish.
Yeah, and Silk is like, oh, who is this guy? What's his deal? And Auk says, oh, he's a hacker. He's going to teach you how to hack. And I was like, oh, this is Jean just like reminding us that this is his cyberpunk novel.
Yeah.
And
Or his Catching a Ride in Baltimore novel.
yeah, there you go.
I mean, it is definitely cyberpunk. The whole what gods are cyberpunk. You know, it's straight out of fucking the Sprawl trilogy.
Yeah, and even the whirl has similarities to. I mean, obviously it's much bigger, but like the construct, like the sort of cylinder thing is very similar to the. I can't remember what it's called, but at the end of Neuromancer, where where he's going into the cases, whatever the satellite thing, to talk to Wintermute.
The spiral thing.
Yeah, it seems similar.
Lady 3 Jane.
So it's cool. But I like these, like, oh yeah, he's a hacker, but it's just straight up real sword fighting.
Well, because he's hacking his mind.
There you go.
That's all learning is hacking your mind.
And there's like, if it was hacking, like typing on the keys, you have to narrate it or portray it in a way that's like a sword fight for it to be exciting. I feel like Wolfe is like, fuck the like tapping on the keys. We'll just go straight to the good part and put swords in their hands.
Well, it's like that scene in The Matrix, that first like time he like that fight program or whatever.
I know Kung Fu.
Tom Sawyer?
What?
Did you say I know Tom Sawyer?
Kung Fu?
Oh, Kung Fu.
I was saying the line from the scene.
I heard Tom Sawyer.
The classic line from The Matrix.
And then Tom Sawyer by Rush kicks in. That wouldn't be like the worst scene.
It is the 90s movies attempting to make hacking cinematic is amazing.
It's one of my favorite tropes.
Yeah.
It is
hilarious.
hilarious.
The epitome of it is the movie Hackers, but there's so many other times where they're like, "What the fuck are we gonna do?" It's great.
I feel like it became a little thing that would show up on the like shows like Law and Order or any kind of procedural crime show would have an episode or so every once in a while where someone had to hack. You have this beautiful thing of someone frantically doing this and like, oh no, it's bad. Oh, but now it's getting better. And now it's fine. We did it. And that's the entire. That's how you portray it.
It's like
I love
someone
when they-
typing on a computer with some like really intense music.
Yeah, and then they just.
I love when it just becomes close-ups of an anxious face and a meter slowly going across. A
Yeah.
very 1995
Independence
emotion
Day.
right there.
I mean, that's the problem.
Independence
with
Day did that really big,
that's the
didn't
problem
they?
with Cyberpunk in any media that's not just a book is that
Mhm.
it is really hard to make hacking look or feel interesting. And I mean, some games maybe get close to it, but I feel like a lot of
Office Space does it really well.
What?
Yeah.
Office Space does it really well.
Oh,
He's uploading the exploit, like it's so dramatic, and it's just a whole bunch of meters going across.
And the great thing is when the meter is going, but then it like stops and it's like processing, like it's having a problem, you know? Because that's something everyone can identify with, right? Like you're waiting for your thing to download, and it's
Now
downloaded
millennials,
75%, but then it stops. You're like, oh no, it's not gonna work. It's not downloaded.
only teens in the 90s can identify with that.
Yeah,
The current youth download gigabytes in seconds.
it's just free. It's just all out there.
Yeah.
But maybe
Anyway.
that's why like William Gibson like invented, you know, cyberspace in the way that he did, was that he needed to dramatize,
It's
you know.
there was a hot minute where I feel like everyone just assumed like as the internet gets better, we'll be walking around in it more and we'll have more fake body parts and fake like extensions of our identity that are figurative.
Yeah,
And we
the
just
VR
skip that.
version. Although, I mean, even like, I feel like Snow Crash is like the most, like the classic example of that. But even that was like supposed to be pretty tongue in cheek.
But
Yeah.
why didn't we get it in real life? People gave up on that way too quickly in real life.
I read an article one time that I couldn't understand about why virtual reality isn't something that people can actually practice. It just looks good. There's no practical reason that it would be a convenient thing to use, and that's why it's not.
Because it's not convenient.
Well, it's like
Because there's really nothing about it that makes the it just makes the user experience more confusing, really.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
no
it's because of
practical
your
application, really, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can pretend to like touch a box or something.
But what an awful world where everything is shorn down to only what is practical. Considering we're on the internet like 17 hours a day.
they've tried to do it over and over again. Like there's
Yeah.
so many versions of that have been attempted, and it might catch on for a little bit. Like Sony had a whole like PlayStation thing where you could make an avatar, and there were shops and all kinds of stuff.
Xbox did that too.
Yeah, and nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
Like it's fun.
I mean,
to
Second
make,
Life is out there if you want it.
right? It's fun to make the avatar, but almost everything else is not worthwhile.
Now, having said that, everybody's all up in their Animal Crossing.
True.
which is as close to that as we've got.
That at least
Or
gives-
World of Warcraft is all your massively
But there's
multiplayer.
stuff to do there. They give you stuff to do.
That's
Or,
and
like-
there's like a fiction that you're operating within that makes
But just like VR chat or something, it's just like, okay, hi guys.
Hi, I'm a squid today. Hey,
and the
let's go to
whole-
a bar that's on a pool on the top of the moon. That'd be great.
But like
Yeah.
the whole shadow runny kind of thing of like, you know, I'm just fill out quality assurance forms, but I'm going to do it as a squid that's touching a box. Like, there's just that's not saleable. Nobody needs it. So
If
it's never
you're
gonna
if you're
happen.
on the internet 17 hours a day, I will say at some point you may need it. You may need to be a squid to keep
People
going.
haven't needed it enough for it to
Right. Give it
catch
time.
on enough to become a thing.
Give it time. We'll be squids, I think, when we're old. And like 2
Yeah.
generations from now, kids are like, what the fuck? The internet sucks. It's just words.
It might not look like what we expected.
Yeah.
You know, whenever VR comes, it might be different than what we're picturing now.
This
The
year,
lawnmower
we
man.
did achieve satisfactory brain-machine interface. So now you can plug your brain into the internet. You can jack in now.
And then what? You see it in your mind? You see images without using your eyes?
You can mentally interact with your phone. I don't think that there's a visual element to it yet.
Oh, so you say scroll up and it scrolls up. You say in your head to yourself, scroll up, and your phone will scroll up.
You say, call Jackie, and it calls Jackie, and then you can just talk out loud. And
That shit is just Siri, but like a secret for the
Well,
beginning.
and the person who owns it right now is Mark Zuckerberg.
Conqueror Zuckerworm.
That's right.
I mean, the applications for disabled people, I think that's a lot of
That's
it come down to accessibility being an initial thing, and then a lot of technology.
And then making everyone dependent, and thus, in
I
the
don't
way,
think it's
handicapped.
about I don't think it's about dependency, but I like there's a new.
Zuckerberg is about dependency. That's his business model.
Well,
is
Elon-
people being
Elon
dependent on what he
Musk's-
provides.
Elon Musk says that we have to build our brains into machines, otherwise there's going to be a human-machine war and we will lose. And the only way to win it is to preemptively build our organic parts into the machine. I don't know that that's true.
The way to preemptively win it is destroy the machines while they're weak.
Oh, I see. What I think we should do is like build up the machines real good and then just leave. And go live in space and then actually evolve into squids. Like, so we could really be squids, not just on the
we
internet.
know that squids aren't humans who left and evolved and came back.
Exactly.
And then they've returned to warn us.
We don't know.
They're real smart. They can open up jars.
They're really smart.
The first indicator of smartness being able to open a jar.
That is the only indicator of smartness.
They should have put that in
Everything else is
2001
probably
Space
bull.
Odyssey. A bunch of monkeys get a jar with a stick in it. One of them opens a jar and gets out the stick. Holds it up. This chapter is really good.
It is a good chapter.
Say more good things about it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I think that there's some really big, huge, like, mic drop moments at the very beginning. Like, when Crane says, he's talking about he doesn't want to get interrupted, and most of all, a night in which none of the fools that Viron called women decided that some previously unnoticed mole was in fact the first symptom of a fatal disease. That line is so amazing because, not knowing anything else about Crane right now, it just sounds like he's a raging misogynist.
Right.
But that's not true because he's a minority from the matriarchal country. So his knowing that and hearing him talk about the fools that Viron called women, and that he's comparing them to the women of his own country who run the shit.
I mean, it's still a stripe of misogyny, but
he earned it.
Definitely see it in a completely different light when you know
Yeah.
Crane.
Yeah, it's like they aren't like the other girls.
Yeah. And then, okay, so the mole part of this too is a whole nother thing. This woman noticed that a unnoticed mole was in fact the first symptom of a fatal disease. It sounds like he's making a joke about their vanity, but he himself is a mole, and he is the first symptom of a fatal disease, of the invasion.
That too, yeah.
It's
Also,
this.
mole can be the first sign of a fatal disease. It very famously is.
Right.
But that is true, but it's also a stereotype of rich people that they're constantly analyzing their blemishes and being like, will I die because of this ugly patch of skin?
But it's also a stereotype of doctors that people fucking die because they're like, fuck you, you have a mole, get the fuck out of my office.
Mm-hmm.
And they drive away in their Corvette.
You're an idiot. Now give me $10,000.
Dr. Corvette.
One of the weird, I'm gonna tell you this even though it's so stupid. One of the weird, like, story things that Wolfe, have you guys all met Wolfe?
What?
Little Howlin'
That
Wolf,
Wolf.
not Gene Wolf.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
Little Howlin' Wolf,
Howlin' Wolf.
different
He
guy.
used to live behind my house, and at one time in my house. He has like, so if you've met him, you know that he has these like kind of like repetitive loop anecdotes, and then they like change over time. But one of the weird ones, well, so there was this cat that one of these like insane alley cats that lived behind our house. We used to refer to it as Val Kilmer. It had this spot on its face, and one of his things was like, yeah, you know, Val Kilmer, he has this blemish on his face, and if you work with him, if he catches you looking at it, you get fined $1,000. That was one of his things he would say all the time.
Is that true about Val Kilmer?
I don't know, but that's why he called this cat Val.
It's true about Ellen, I think.
DeGeneres?
Yeah.
She's got a face spot that she gets mad at you if you look at it.
Well, she gets mad at you if you look at her, and you get punished.
That is one spiteful motherfucker right there. She's
Ellen DeGeneres?
She's a mean person.
Yeah, it came out. She had real you can't look at her rules.
Yeah. She was mistreating the people who work for her in a bunch of different ways, right?
Yeah.
She had an uprising.
I mean, word on the street is she's an evil asshole.
Yeah,
I always said it.
I mean, you know, notwithstanding the whole Bush thing.
Oh, and she came back. It was like, so she got railed all summer about like hundreds of anecdotes that came out of how what a crazy monster she was to her staff and other. Oh yeah, and the George Bush thing. So she came back after COVID, like brought her, her show's back now after this huge scandal, and she did like an apology and stuff, and it was filmed as if it was a regular Ellen show where there's a live studio audience. But it was for COVID, there was no live studio audience, and so she's delivering this like heartfelt like, I'm so sorry, this is like not the way it seems, but also like I'm gonna do something and I feel so bad, to no one with a canned audience sounds.
She used canned audience sounds? That's crazy.
That's what it looked like. I mean, this was I think before Hollywood had come back. It looked, maybe it was mostly the moment, knowing that all, crowds had just been wiped off the agenda for a while. Mm-hmm. When this happened, I want to say it was the end of the summer or something. Or beginning of summer? Fuck, what is time anymore? But it appeared to be a very staged thing that...
It's not really like a disappointing loss or something.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm just saying, like, Ellen coming out here.
Oh, no, not Ellen.
Yeah.
Ellen has appeared evil to me for many, many a year.
Yeah.
Well,
Ellen is a creeping poison.
She's on the ropes, I think, still. But also, I guess she's a millionaire, so she could just keep making her show if she wants for.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised if Ellen is starting to approach the billions. Ellen's doing pretty good.
She's definitely drinking the adrenochrome.
She is a successful Oprah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that would.
And terrifying to work for.
Anecdotes aside.
Yeah.
Ellen DeGeneres mean.
I wonder if she is a type of person who used to be cool, but fame corrupted them and, kind of made her crazy, like
that's my
Howard Hughes style.
Or was being an asshole the way she got to where she was? Was she always? Was that always in her?
Yeah, I think that being successful became more important than being Ellen.
I don't know. I could see it being from the beginning, like she had great big ambitions that like the way a president does.
Well, have you ever watched early Ellen stand-up?
I have.
Yeah, I have. It's really funny.
I don't think she seems that way. I think that she seems legitimately humble in the beginning.
Her early
and I think
stuff
that
is
there's
really
a definite point where she starts just acting humble and being a shark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it could have been an act the whole time.
Yeah.
I suppose it could
like
have
Obama.
Been, but then it was a good act that became less good.
I mean, I don't think people get into stand-up comedy because they're sharks. Like that's not really like that's a really hard row to hoe if you're trying to get famous. I feel like people get into it initially because it actually needs, especially in the 80s and 90s. I mean, there's a boom for it, so maybe it was a little more reasonable. But for the most part, it's a pretty hard gig early on. And if you get a big break, you get it's a pretty big deal. But she got pretty big breaks in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess
She had a show.
My guess is that after being the first out celebrity, she probably got to be really, I don't know, she just got to be really famous. And
I think that became a huge thing, being the first out.
There must have been a whole bunch of gay people in LA that were everyone knew they were gay, and we're watching that whole thing happen and being like, oh, I guess I should have made a sitcom very special episode about myself to,
Well, yeah, which I mean, exactly. Once you get to have that rubber stamp of first one,
which is ridiculous.
That's a significant thing, and I think it's the kind of thing that history can easily overtake you when you are the first one.
But
I feel like that's sort of symptomatic to. There are a lot of, especially white, cis, gay folks who lived through the 80s or whatever, so they don't, because there was hardship that they experienced then, they won't really accept any criticism of how they are now. And how a lot of them are now is 60-year-olds with lots of money who are kind of racist or are often racist.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like when the classic problem of cis white gay men who are just psychotically misogynistic.
No use for those girls.
But it's there's this thing that it's oh, well, because I especially the ones who are a little older now, it's oh, well, I know what it's like to live in the shadows or whatever.
Yeah, my dad disowned me when I
beyond
came out, and then I lived through AIDS. So
it's funny because it's kind of like the boomers about war. Of we went to war, I saw war, and so you guys don't get to tell me shit for the rest of my life.
Well, I mean, so my understanding of this problem is previous generations being what's wrong with you whiny ass kids? We lived through these problems and we solved them. We solved the problems. Can't you just live in the solution of problems that we created for you? And the kids are no, there's new problems, everybody. We got new those problems evolved into other problems. There's other problems. We're working on the current problems. And but we solved problems, guys. We worked so hard. Can we get some credit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see that. You can see that in old feminists versus new feminists. Like the race issue, of course. The hippies think that we solved race. Yeah, it's. Yeah.
Well,
once you get old enough that you drop out of time and your style doesn't change, you also don't notice what is going on around you.
Well, and if you achieve a level of comfort, like if you get through the hardship, and
if you move to the suburbs.
Yeah, well, if you get through the hardship and then end up like whatever, you're now accepted by the culture, so you can get a job that pays $120,000 a year, and the people who work for you are just like younger generations and stuff, then it just doesn't matter. You don't know.
Well, but also like the boomers and to a degree the Gen Xers also just grew up in a time of like material wealth and stability.
Yeah.
That where like the social issues are like now we have social issues that are also inextricably linked to like economic issues, and like no one has any resources to survive. Like everyone's functioning on the bare minimum of survival, and then there's the because that also all of what we were just talking about also compounds with the reality of like, or the narrative of like, well, I worked for everything that I have, like you guys are lazy, you don't want to work,
I mean,
it's true. I don't.
Our standards are also different than what standards were in the past too. Like I was thinking about this. I read maybe a tweet or something that was talking about like how people are suffering right now, which people are. People are definitely, this is a hard time and people are suffering. But that just made me think about analogous periods, maybe in like the last 150 years of American history. Like, for example, I don't know, the Great Depression or the Spanish flu or other things, where people were also suffering. And, I couldn't help but think to myself that the suffering was probably much greater than what we are experiencing now.
But suffering is relative. Like if you're suffering, if you're in the state of suffering, like the fact that someone suffered worse in 1918 doesn't change what you feel.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of where I'm going to, and that I think we're, in my opinion, I don't know, this isn't a complicated way of saying it, but we just kind of we're just kind of like asking better questions than people were back then. And
we're asking questions that are relevant to our current time. And it's difficult to. We're talking about things where it's difficult for them to have any kind of quantitative reality. You can't quantize suffering or privilege or interrogation. There's no way to ask
or virtue
question in this situation that is better than a question that was asked in a different situation, because they are completely alien to each other.
And if your goal is moving culture forward, if your goal is actual progression, then you should never be like, well, they had it worse then. It's like, yes, they did have it worse then, but it was different, and we're still trying to make it better. Because it was worse then doesn't mean we should make it better.
We have the resources to make it. To eliminate certain parts of suffering. Like it's like the only reason that certain of the elements of suffering that are present is because of corruption and just like graft.
Yeah, because we don't have it unless they share it with us, and they don't do that.
So I do think it's important to remember that as we work to alleviate different flavors of suffering, that is just going to create new flavors of suffering. That is inevitable, and not a reason to not work for it. We should still try to suffer.
Complete absence of suffering, but.
Well, I think that when people lose sight of that, when people's goal is to alleviate all suffering, utopianism that's where fascism comes from.
I don't know that I'm on board with this idea that, like, of course in the past people suffered worse and had it harder. I don't know that that's necessarily true, because I think it
No,
serves
they're suffering.
it serves a narrative in which we are like the ultimate, like we're like an evolved form of the past, where they are primitive and like incomplete and simple, and we are sophisticated and smart, and we continue in this like endlessly rising line.
It's funny because like in light of that, and then what Tim said, I've actually been more recently like something I've been thinking about more recently is about how maybe it would have been better to just be an actual serf.
An actual
serf.
Oh yeah, I've read a lot of stuff.
Like
about
I honestly
that.
think, because at least like like you and the lords have this relationship. You know what it is. It's described.
You see each other's faces in real life.
The only thing that was worse about being a medieval serf was healthcare, as I understand it. Serfs worked less, they ate more, they had great sex. It was a much easier, more leisurely lifestyle than what the modern person has.
And,
it's just that you were going to get septicemia.
Can I raise my hand here really quick?
Oh, sorry, man.
No. I just wanted to get this in before we moved off too far. That like, okay. Jen, this point, and Connor, you too, of like it being better to be a serf. That's exactly what Gene Wolfe was arguing about. What J.R.R. Tolkien identified, in the world of Middle Earth, and it's interesting that like Wolfe really like crystallized that. And I don't know if everyone here read that essay, but basically Wolfe in this essay describes the experience of reading the first edition of Lord of the Rings back before anyone knew what it was, and then second, what he goes on to describe, I think, what it is that he appreciates ultimately about J.R.R. Tolkien and Middle Earth, as like an older man. I don't exactly remember when Wolfe wrote this, but I think it was post 2000. So
yeah, he wrote it in the last 15 years, I think.
Yeah, pretty recently. So an older man reflecting on Middle Earth, and what Wolfe, and this is a really good essay too. And I don't necessarily think I agree with Wolfe's worldview or anything, but I think he's really smart in how he distills this, and basically says that at some point in human history we developed, and this isn't his wording, but it's kind of my paraphrasing, like a class consciousness, and from that point forward humanity became more complicated and again, to bring this word up, like started to suffer more. And Wolfe says that in Middle Earth he presents you this fantasy where no one questions their place in the world.
Right.
No one, you're born, that's what you are, you live it. It doesn't cause you all of this anxiety, and therefore I assume that Wolfe would argue there's less crime, there's less bureaucracy, there's less problems, because this is Wolfe's argument, but it kind of goes back to exactly what, without reading it, what Kirby brought up, this idea that like if you were what you were, it might have been better than
and there was
some way.
There was alternatives.
The of this though is survivalists.
Well, but I would actually argue that the state of the serf is actually more class conscious than the state of what we have now. That's my point, is like you recognize that there's like a distinction between that class of people and your class of people, which is not what we have now. Now we have like everyone who's poor is just a millionaire who hasn't hit it rich yet, and that allows like the people who actually are in charge of everything to have like this veil over it, where it's like, well, you could be me too, and the reality is that you fucking can't.
An illusion of mobility.
Money is the true opiate of the masses.
Knows that.
Yeah.
And there's like a freedom in that. There's a freedom in how explicit the relationship is. And now the relationship is completely clouded. Like you could become Jeff Bezos. but
Well,
you fucking can't.
I guess to talk
And shouldn't.
True.
to talk about the Wolfe essay and the Moorcock essay that I sent. Like, I feel like they actually they're very interesting because they're written like 30 years apart. Like the Moorcock essay was written from the perspective of like Moorcock as a young editor of a like new wave sci-fi magazine,
and a left-wing guy.
And a socialist. But they have the same reading of Lord of the Rings, which is like, this is fundamentally a conservative thing, and Moorcock calls it Tory shit, basically. And Wolfe says, like, I don't know, this sounds all right to me.
This is also a British person and an American.
Right. And it's very, very interesting to read those two together, just because I feel like they all fundamentally do agree on what Lord of the Rings is about, and just take completely, one of them says it's good and one of them says it's bad. And Mark is really like, he is kind of insufferable in that very like know-it-all 70s socialist way.
Well, this is the whole fucking problem with the left. I agree with what they say, but they got to be a bunch of fucking pricks while they're saying it.
Right.
Mark, do you think that he was responding to kind of Moorcock and Moorcock-esque criticism? That Wolfe was responding?
I'm sure that Wolfe was aware of that essay. I mean, it's a pretty well-known essay. It was written in the 70s, so like, at least people in the know, like sci-fi writers and stuff, would have been aware of it.
Yeah.
Especially someone like Wolfe, who was clearly involved in and in some ways indebted to that new wave movement. So I'm sure that was probably in the back of his mind. I did some Googling. I was trying to find out if they had ever like been in dialogue, if there was any real like substantive discussion about the two of them, and I couldn't really find anything. Although this is sort of off topic. I did find there's some forum. It was like Science Fiction World Forum or something, and somebody was just like, Gene Wolfe sucks. That was like the title of the post. And the first post was just like, I couldn't get into this. Like, this seemed boring. But Severian, I kind of like Severian. He seems to like the ladies like I do. And then, I mean, the rest of the posts are like, yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody, but like, you are wrong about your take is bad. And the guy eventually is like, I'm sorry that I called it this and everything. But it was so telling that in that first post he was like, yeah, this kind of sucks, and I'm not really into it, but I think Severian's pretty tight.
Yeah.
So for people that are watching, the essays that we're talking about is The Best Introduction to the Mountains by Gene Wolfe from 2001, and the Moorcock essay is called Epic Poo from 1978.
And wait, can we establish something here? I know, Jen, you said you've never read Lord of the Rings. Have you seen the films?
Yeah.
Okay. Has everyone here at least seen the films and kind of knows, like, the content of Lord of the Rings?
I seen the cartoon, motherfucker.
Okay. Have you? But you know Lord of the Rings, right? You never read it, Connor, but you.
No, I haven't read the second half of the third book.
Okay.
But like, I've read the Silmarillion. I'm all up in the Lord of the Rings.
Okay, cool. All right.
I'm not floored by it.
I just wanted to make sure that.
So one of my favorite things about
I sent that email because I just wanted you to know that I'm not. Like,
yeah, no, that's good.
I don't really have like much of like I don't think about Tolkien. I don't have like takes on Tolkien. I'm vaguely like.
Well, because you never played Dungeons and Dragons as a child, did you?
Well, but I mean, there would be no Star Trek without Tolkien. Tolkien is an important person in the generation of genre.
I'm saying, like, I just don't have a stance.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, like,
gotcha.
fuck Tolkien.
But you know about it. You know what's up.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things about these two essays together is that both of them have a bunch of brief excerpts from other works by sci-fi fantasy authors. And in Wolfe's, they're very short, and each one is Wolfe just going, look how cool this writing is, look at the feeling this encapsulates, I love this writing. And then Moorcock takes much longer excerpts for which he says, look at this part that kind of fucking sucks, and then look over here, this kind of fucking sucks, and this is not so bad, like this I could go with, but they both do that repeatedly within their essays, and I feel like it sets them up in such a beautiful counterpoint.
Although I mean, Moorcock does bring in a lot of other authors.
Yeah, he does.
Which
he
honestly,
brings in a lot.
Because of that essay, I read the first 2 books in the Dark is Rising series over the last like week and a half, and I am so down with it. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, Dark is Rising is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. So,
I love it.
But
I don't know.
The thing is, the relationship, like, Moorcock wants to manage words and make them better. Because, like, these are all the mistakes that people make, and this is all the, like, these are the many different ways I've found to, like, roast these other authors. And Wolfe is just not a manager. He's like a peasant that wants to go to church and be like, the words are so great, they're going to save us.
I feel like the Moorcock essay was a little was not that effective, in my opinion. I don't think it was very focused, and like I feel like Moorcock was analyzing the complexity of language more or less, and I feel like his conclusion is like some language sounds smarter and fancier than others, and I think that he basically tries to argue that because Tolkien's language, in his view, does not, therefore it is lesser and like middle class pat. But I don't exactly feel like he makes that connection. I feel like I made that connection for him. But I feel like his essay in general was like unfocused. Like, he starts off with this critique of Tolkien's content, but really the essence of his essay was looking at language and basically its complexity. I feel like Moorcock comes across as just like a pedantic ass, you know, like.
Well, but that's definitely what Michael Moorcock is.
And
when Michael Moorcock is good, he's good because he's being a really good pedantic ass.
But I don't feel like he engages with the content of Tolkien that well, and that he's a little dismissive, which makes him, to me, seem like kind of like a yipping little terrier, you know, next to a silent, strong bulldog.
A Saint Bernard.
You know, like,
Moorcock ain't got nothing on Tolkien.
You know, like, he's a fine writer, but
of a magazine that is like placing itself as the vanguard of new writing in speculative fiction, and like making it literary, and like I think it is pedantic.
He's being a scene guy.
But I think that for him it was very important to have this like very considered and literary critical look at fantasy literature and what it is and what he wants it to be, which, you know, it like is a pedantic thing to do, but also it makes a lot of sense from the context that he's writing from.
Michael Moorcock also has more at stake in this conversation than Gene Wolfe does, just because he's both temporally and spatially closer and thematically closer to Tolkien. You know, he's British, he's the hippie.
He's like,
you know, like he is talking to his dad, whereas Gene Wolfe is talking to his like uncle from over the pond that he hasn't met.
Yeah.
And Wolfe and Tolkien are both Catholic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They are into some costumes and incense.
Is worshipping Elric, I assume, or something?
Moorcock strikes me as a classic atheist.
He's really fucking mad at the Anglican Church. I can tell you that from putting on Behold the Man as a play.
Yes.
He was damaged by the Anglicans.
And while we're on religion, I'd like to go to my next awesome part of this beginning of Crane in this chapter.
Yeah, what's the bullet point?
I like so Crane, who is a foreigner secretly, is complaining about the weather and how awful just Viron is. Just it's got this horrible weather, and he says human beings were never intended for such a climate, which is ironic because we know for a fact that this is a generation ship built and designed for people to live on. and it's humorous that to Crane this is such an obvious, like, this is so stupid. People were never supposed to live here.
Well,
but it's wrong.
But isn't it true that it's malfunctioning and that like the seasons are not acting properly? And
yeah, but Crane here.
Think that it's malfunctioning.
It's not malfunctioning. It's functioning. It's properly. It's decaying properly.
I don't think that's true. I think that it's the whole point of what, like, this is a part of the ship getting the humans to leave.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The ship is purposely becoming a place that is untenable for human life.
But that's what I'm saying. It is. It's not. It wasn't designed like to the degree that it's functioning by design at the moment. It's functioning to try to like push people out. It's not. Like,
right, but
no longer in the point.
But Crane's not saying that. That's not what Crane is saying. Crane is saying, like, I know better than whoever created this place because I can see that you're not supposed to live here. He's not saying that, like, he's not giving any kind of, like, qualification having to do with the evacuation of the ship. Like, he just denies that there could be a design involved because he doesn't see it.
Which is how climate change deniers see people talking about climate change.
Okay.
That's what people talking about climate change sounds like to climate deniers. It's like, how could you deign to affect the climate? It's doing what it's supposed to do, and if it kills us all, we're supposed to die.
I mean, it's coherent. It's a coherent belief.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I do think that we should leave the planet.
To return a little bit to Crane here, immediately after this thing about human beings weren't supposed to be there, which I feel like is a Wolfe's kind of slight dig at atheists thinking they know right from or good from evil, that they know better than what exists, what they observe. It's wrong, and then he immediately, the next paragraph is about how tomorrow would be skills day. The market would be closed officially, at least, and nearly empty. That would be the best time for turning in a report, and the trader would be leaving on Hyrax day. This little passage right here sounds like Silk's mind, you know? Like, This is what Silk does, but it's not. It's just a regular-ass man who doesn't believe in religion talking about a schedule. The market's not closed on, the market's not open on Sunday. That's not a religious statement. And the best day will be Hyrax day. He's a normal dude that doesn't believe in religion talking about time. But his brain sounds exactly like Silk in that moment.
Well, to a degree, we have to ask, and I'm sorry that we do, is maybe that obsession over days and such actually Horn coming through? Like,
I think if it's Horn coming through, it's Horn doing a deliberate literary device here. Like, I don't think Horn's doing it by accident. If Horn's doing it, it's not an accident. It's good writing.
Okay.
And that what we're seeing here is that Silk sounds insane when we know what he's taught, when we know he believes in the gods. But also people who are not insane, regular-ass people, are frequently doing the same motions in their head. They just don't ascribe anything sacred to it at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So you discover that the rituals of routine that make up day-to-day society have a synergy with the rituals of high religion.
Yeah, which you disregard because they're silly.
I think that totally makes sense.
And then immediately my thought is, like, when we talk about Tuesday and Sunday and Thursday, we are doing this exact thing that Crane is doing right here. We are like going through those rituals, like you say, with absolute complete disregard for the dimension, like the depth of them.
Yeah.
That's not real to us.
I had a fight for a little Matt Zealander recently, where
you call him Little Matt Zealander, like you're Greg Davies talking about Alex Horn?
Well, because he just like came out and was like, I think that the Catholic Church completely arrested society for all of the Dark Ages. And I was like, yeah, but they also kept society alive. We had this fight where Matt Zielander really wants the Catholic Church to be only evil. And it's this kind of thing where, but you can't, the Catholic Church has so influenced everything that is around us today that we're fish in water, we can't even see how the Catholic Church has structured our lives. And the like armature of Catholicism.
2021.
All Protestantism is draped over, like it's at the center of our lives. And then the Catholic Church can't see how they are draped over a similar armature that had been built up in Mediterranean paganism since time immemorial. It's insane how you don't see how your rituals didn't spring fully formed from your culture, that they are part of a continuum.
That's got to be one of the main themes of this fucking book and this chapter specifically.
I think so. I mean, you check off one of our boxes, but that is the Gravesian thesis, I think.
Which I think brings us back to this idea that suffering, like people suffered worse in the past. I feel like if you follow all these books, Wolfe's argument is that it's a loop. It's the same. They felt the same as we feel because we're all humans, and this is what happens when you're a human in the world. Things are fucking falling apart and going to shit in our giant collaboration, and it sucks, and people are suffering.
I think it's difficult when we try to apply the laws of hard science to the soft sciences, but I do think that with a little poetry, you usually can figure out how it works. And all physics is full of laws of conservation of momentum, of energy, of matter. Everything's conserved, and so it just makes sense that the same would hold true in sociology. That nothing is really created or destroyed; it's just rearranged.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been reading that Sabian Symbols book.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's like the basic argument is like, okay, you have these different, I mean, I feel like everything we read is kind of about that. It's like you have these different, it's like there's only kind of there's not an infinite range of like human experiences. They're all, you can categorize them. Like it's a large range. Like it's a very large, but it's not infinite. Like it's basically like the same lessons and themes repeating over and over again.
Yeah.
So like, how can we kind of like break them down into different categories and like, whatever, sort of try to like identify them so that you can work with like the meaning that comes through the experience. Like how can you like distill them into their meaning or whatever?
Astrology and the tarot.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like that's what symbols are like good for.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of a system of symbols is that you can actually break down basic human experiences into a finite cycle.
I think it could go beyond basic human experience too. I think that these the 11 plot lines of human stories have their basis in like particle physics.
As above, so below.
And again, this is a Gravesian. If the White Goddess, in many ways, is about the migration of, stories that are about stars and planets and the seasons into stories that are about humans having wars and how that is a continuum as well.
There's a really good part in the like introduction in that book where it's like talking about there being like facts and like material kind of like hard reality stuff and then like meaning and symbols and how they're translatable, but they're not like one-to-one translatable. Like you have 360 degrees in astrology or whatever, like you have 360 degrees, like that's like what the Sabian symbols are. You know, it's like one for each degree.
Right.
Which is the book that
you're
reading?
There's 365 days in a year. Like there's like a factual reality thing, and then there's a symbolic thing. And they aren't like an exact perfect lineup, but like the point is like you have meaning, and then you have like facts, which is like I think like a pretty interesting thing that we get into a lot on this.
I mean, this is general semantics. The menu's not the food.
Right.
What is the book, Jen? Is it Mark Edmund Jones' Sabian Symbols?
No, it's the Dane Rudyard. It's like impossible. I found an EPUB of it on archive.org, and it's kind of like a bad, one of those classic bad PDF things where some of the words are weird.
Yeah.
But,
I love those.
But it's like the paperback is like $200 or $300, the cheapest one you can find. They're like, I guess they just never reissued them.
Oh well, I'll get the archive. I'll get the archive one.
I mean, it's supposed to be kind of like it's supposed to be the best one.
An astrological mandala, the cycle of transformations.
Astrological mandala, yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna download the shit right now.
It's really cool. I've been really enjoying like reading about all the different degrees here in my chart. It's pretty great. My rising sign degree is the symbol is it's something like the fairy king approaches his domain.
What?
The fairy king approaches his domain.
Oh wow.
Or something like that. They're really great. They're really great, and his commentary is really good, I think. I'm into it. I think you guys would be into it. And I can send that like weird kind of fancy EPUB that I have. Because
yeah, give me the PDF.
It's not PDFs, it's an EPUB, but I bet I can...
You can get the PDF from Archive.
Yeah, the PDF actually might be... I was thinking about downloading the PDF. It might be better to read that, even though it's like kind of more annoying, because then at least the text would be like, you know, like that weird thing where an M becomes like an R and an N, shit like that.
Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna put the link. I'll put the link in the group email, and I'll put it in the chat of this thing. Hey, I should put all of these things.
I think it's, and I think like his intro, like the way he describes like all the shit that I was just talking about, he says it in a much nicer way. But I really like how he breaks it down. I think there's some cool shit in there.
Awesome. We're all gonna learn a new magic.
Yeah. I do kind of want to get. I decided recently I just want to get better with astrology. I want to be like, I want to figure that system out more.
It's dope.
I love that shit. It makes so much sense to me.
It's a nice way to bring all kinds of symbols into play in your life. And it's like having a huge vocabulary of established, coherent symbols is invaluable in this world.
Yeah.
And it gives us points of reference to talk with each other about like kind of obscure personality traits and conflicts and stuff, which we just don't have like an analog that can handle as much little detail as I feel like astrology can when you're talking about how people act and feel.
Well, and that's also like when Connor, when you were saying like, well, it's not and it's not necessarily limited to like human experience or whatever. I think like the thing that I think is interesting about astrology specifically is that it is like more. I mean, it is about that. It is like about human experience. But obviously, the symbols themselves can be mapped. Like all symbols can be mapped, you know, up and down the scale or whatever. But
yeah, poetry is the rainbow bridge between the individual and the other.
Yes.
Poetry, it's the best. Motherfucking poetry, y'all.
I agree.
It seems like there's a lot of really dense astrological shit going on this year too.
Seems like it.
We had that.
Certainly something has happened this year.
Oh yeah, I mean something has happened very I feel like things are happening very recently.
Something about this year was different than other years for me.
And I think
I mean, like consciously.
I'm referring to this year as in like this one we just started. I think like I just feel like this coming year that's gonna be even more true.
Huh. Probably. I hope so. It would be so depressing if it weren't.
Yeah. I just have a feeling.
My new year doesn't start until January 7th.
Your birthday?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Thank you.
It's so close.
I mean, my life has to hold its breath until after I get past that graveyard.
Honestly, it'd be nice to have a little zone after the holidays, considering the holidays are not a peaceful time, you know? Like, usually, that it would be cool to, like, have a calends kind of 1st through the 7th, dead air, nobody's allowed to do shit. Now we start the year. Connor's birthday.
I mean, for the rest of the world, January 6th is the Epiphany is real Christmas. So, like, the rest of the world does kind of wait till my birthday. And thank you, world.
I mean, there's a lot of different New Years.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. Also,
March is the real one.
I mean, there's the
September's
Aries, there's the astrological New Year, there's the Jewish New Year is in the fucking fall. The Lunar New Year.
All rules, yeah. Fucking
Chinese
the moon.
New Year. When's the Chinese New Year?
February,
yeah. There's lots of different New Years.
Hey, I made up a new Christmas carol.
On my people's New Year, you eat so much food.
I made up a Christmas carol in the spirit of the holidays and incorporating both of those faiths, holy day. And it goes, I don't know all of it, just the hook is something like, have you ever thought since Jesus was a Jew that Santa Claus could be one too? And then that would be, the song would be about Santa Claus doing Hanukkah traditions and having a great time.
That's cool.
That reminds me that I should probably tell Connor that Caroline and I have been, like, regularly just, like, riffing out these, like, really funny little, like, ditty songs that are, to me, very reminiscent of the Creepers. And,
oh, cool.
And we decided that like proto band would be called the Sheepers.
Okay.
It's sheep.
Right. Yeah. Well, we should go on tour sometime.
Where's the Creepers? I'm gonna put that link in the chat too. Where's that album online?
For one of
I don't know.
Twitter, one of our female friends had an idea for a Quitter cover band called Clitter, where it was just all ladies.
There was a potential Santa Dad's clone band called Santa Dogs.
That's a better band name.
Whatever, Mark. I didn't come up with the band name, Mark. No one in the band did. It was thrust upon us by the fates, by Lady Fortunia.
Yeah. How did that band name actually come about?
Oh, Dan had made a fake band on a poster, and me and Josh were like, "Who are the Santa Dads?" And he was like, "You guys are."
Well, there you go.
Then we played that show.
And then you kept being a band.
Yeah, we did it for a while.
I gotta go to the facilities. I'll be right back.
Oh, bye, Ryan. Bye, Patera Bread.
Patera Bread is so funny. There's a heavy Panera contingent at my job, and there's like a couple metal dudes at my job too.
A couple of what?
Metal guys.
Oh, word, metal. Yeah.
And one of them just always called this Pantera bread, but then also he calls it a vulgar display of flour, which I think is really funny.
Nice.
I have a thing that I want to
Zoned out.
bring up that's somehow related to the whole surf thing, but I don't know how they're related, so this might be just a needless tangent.
Surfing bird.
I've been reading a lot lately, or watching YouTube videos a lot about how humanity took a wrong turn in agriculture, and how bad agriculture is for our way of life.
Yeah.
And the Sand people, the Kalahari Bush people, how like they when Ebola struck Africa and they were having to, the World Health Organization was coming in and like making sure that everybody was getting taken care of and being fed and stuff like that. And they did an analysis of the Bush people's diet, and they found that the Bush people were able to eat more than anyone else, and they all only worked 15 hours a week. They had the best lifestyle of anybody, and they're like, oh wow, that's interesting. So they moved them all to ghettos, and made them get jobs.
We fed them fucking McDonald's.
They're like, these people are living great, we gotta stop them from doing that.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah. But so it is this argument, like, because the agriculture requires so much work, and you actually end up eating a less nutritious diet. But then I've been coming up with this idea, because agriculture happens, like humanity happens when we have to leave the trees because they're becoming grasslands, and in order to compete with lions, we have to develop tools, and we become hunters as well as gatherers. And then when those grasslands start becoming deserts, we have to develop agriculture so that we can keep the grass, like we learn how to cultivate grass so that the grasslands don't disappear. And that's when we become farmers.
And that's when Cain slays Abel.
Exactly, that's when Cain slays Abel. Because we know that hunters are like God prefers the hunter, the shepherd, the meat person, to the farm person. But if the farm people don't do their farm thing, then our way of life disappears. So it becomes a sacred thing to preserve the grass. And that's when we start worshiping a wheat goddess as a death goddess. The cult of the skull develops. So anyways, farming bad.
It's true. It allows people to live in a way that's completely disconnected to the terrain and geography on which they are living.
Well, it's where you start the concept of one person working for another person, and that's where dominion comes into play.
Yeah.
We also have
actually, it's not that you become disengaged from the terrain. It's that you decide, you like have a false relationship with the terrain. You have a relationship with the terrain, but it's one that like you feel control over, and you like create, you like the terrain is working for you or whatever. There's a master-slave relationship with the terrain.
Yeah.
It's kind of where the first time we see this scientific, quote unquote, idea of objectivity. That like, I am not part of this land.
Right.
I am master of this land. Is where you move from being an in a way, even if you are from Jericho originally, you're moving from being an autochthon to a colonizer of your own land.
This is what Adam and Eve is about. Yeah? This is like
exactly.
Eat the knowledge, to eat the apple is to gain the knowledge of good and evil and decide, oh, this shouldn't be a swamp, this should be a farm. And this shouldn't be like, people shouldn't be living the way they're doing right now. They should be living a better way.
Well, and it's interesting if we look at the mythographic development of this story. So for the Greeks, this, like, before we know about Greek writing, we have one vase in which Pandora is labeled as Anesidora, which is she who raises gifts up. and she's pictured as a woman who's half buried in the ground with her arms holding up wheat. And this is a representation. In this, we see that Pandora is originally Persephone, that she goes down to hell and brings back the wealth of food and gold. But the Nesadora Persephone person eventually becomes Pandora, who releases demons upon the world. So the same way in the Garden of Eden story, we see ancient people knowing, like, fuck, we have to farm, even though it's ruining us. The mythology is just rife with that warning, which is kind of what we're doing now with Terminator, right? And build and like.
Oh yeah, we're building AI, machine learning,
the internet,
gig economy.
Yeah, we know this thing, and now we have to do it because it's entered our heads, and if we don't do it, it'll kill us.
Yeah, what like Hildegard de Bingen, demonic pride makes you think, because I can finish a task, I can begin any task because I know I can finish it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and isn't that kind of, in some ways, stop me if I'm wrong, the same demon that's eating up Nancy Pelosi, where she's like, no, I've started on this road, I can't get off yet.
Which road is she on?
Fundraising, I think.
Eating the flesh of people.
I mean, that's the disease. That's the disease that all American politicians have.
Yeah,
is fundraising.
That's all they do.
It boggles my mind anytime you're like, Nancy Pelosi, why don't you do something to help the people? And she's like, where will we get the money? We have to be realistic about where we're going to get the money for that. And I'm like, you're a master fundraiser. Raise the funds.
Yeah, but that's not.
She's a master at raising funds.
Nobody ever talks about like having a lack of money or like worrying about the deficit. Nobody in the government who talks about the deficit actually gives a shit about the deficit. Like, that is not a thing.
Imaginary. It doesn't even matter.
Like, who is the person I feel like that enforces the deficit? It's the people that are whining about it. I mean, who is going to come for them if they don't pay the deficit? No one is coming.
China's coming.
China could be coming anyway. You might as well just not pay it.
It's all made up.
It doesn't fucking matter. It absolutely doesn't matter.
Right.
We print money. Like,
it's a like a literary device that's used for real life.
Exactly.
It's
That's exactly right.
What's it called? What's it? Pataphor. Money is a pataphor.
It's interesting if you look at the arguments against raising the stimmy to $2,000. Like, it's actually notable that it's rarely like, oh, we don't have the money to do it. Even though I think that's probably in the back of a lot of, like, you know, kitchen table conservative types. But the argument
was the first thing my mother said.
We don't want to give it to them. Like, the arguments that the politicians give are usually like, that money will, you know, just go towards rich people who don't need it, or that money will just sit in bank accounts.
We don't
that
have
tends
it,
to be the argument in the political spectrum. But yeah, Connor, you were saying that was your mom's argument, and I think
that was the first thing she said is, where are you going to get this money?
Right, that's the argument that, like, families, conservative kind of people around their table talking have, because that's the kind of argument they can envision, because every month you sit down with
maybe we don't give $500 million to Israel.
Balance out, right?
I said take it from the Purdue family.
The reality is that government budgets, especially our government's budget, is not actually run like a family household budget.
Exactly.
We have to like fucking deal with how much money's in the account and how much money the bills are, blah 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 blah. Like, it's not run that way, but it has to be psychologically presented that way to people, so that Connor's mom is like, where are you going to get the money?
Right, exactly.
The reality is that question is not real.
The actual metaphor would be like, okay, like the kid being like, hey, I need a new sweater because I'm really cold and it's winter, and the parent saying, oh, well, we don't have enough money to afford a sweater, so you can't get a sweater. and then the kid saying, well, how about dad doesn't spend $3,000 on bullets this month,
Right.
so I can get a sweater. But that last part is the part that like American public isn't able to jump over. They just hear, oh, it's a lot of money, sweaters are expensive, we can't do it.
There's a
Well, I also feel like governments shouldn't, like, households need to make some money. They need to have a savings. They need to be in the black. Governments shouldn't be. If governments have too much of a surplus, it means they're not spending money on programming for their people, so then they shouldn't exist.
I really like the kid getting the sweater from his dad who buys all the bullets metaphor, because once you make the jump, like I agree with everything everyone said, and that this idea, like Americans can't jump past the household budget model, but when you do make that jump, there's a scary thing in front of you, which is called your dad is your dad. And how would you enforce, even if we know the money is there, it's not as simple as saying like, hey, go get it from the rich people. How do they, like, that's not really enforceable. You can't take the billionaires' money. They just can't.
Stop spending. If we stop buying bullets, then somebody's going to come and invade our house, and we won't be able to use the million bullets that we already have to fend them off.
But you're a kid talking to dad is the thing. Like, even if you have perfect, like,
you have to somehow have a critical mass of people who will say, like, you're not my fucking dad.
Yeah,
I mean,
the whole family has to say it.
That needs to be said. I mean, viewing government as dad is a huge problem. Government is not dad. Government is our employee.
But how do you enforce the things you want from them? You need to be able to, like, if you want to get the money from the billionaires who made the billions during the pandemic, which is absolutely reasonable and a great plan and would help everyone, how do you do it? You can't go get it from them. They won't give it to you.
This is something that
I'm saying that you can't even consider, like, the only way you even get to consider asking that question is after you get to the point, like, we're not at that point where you can even ask the question because because everyone still thinks their dad is their fucking dad. Like,
yeah,
you first have to, like, somehow, and this is like the class consciousness thing. Like, we're not allowed to have class consciousness in this country. Like, we don't have it. We don't fucking have it. You have to say someone else is the reason that you have your problems and not the actual reason, which is fucking rich people.
Yeah.
And, like, until and unless we can get to the point where people can actually, like, see that, then that question doesn't even fucking exist anyway.
It's true, but it's a scary question to me because I can see everyone coming to the point of being like, yeah, that money that billions of dollars everyone just made over the last couple months, they're not going to miss 1 billion of it. Give that to us. And then how do we get it?
But this would have been true. This has always been true. It's not like that's a new thing that, like, the billions of dollars were made over, like that's just the last $1 billion or whatever. Like, that's always been true. We have an extraction economy. We have, like, an extractive economy where wealth is extracted from the bottom to the top, and that's always been true.
Well, I think that a new development, though, is that at all levels of voting, we kind of have this virtue voting. Voting is a moral crusade. So, like what you do, withholding your vote because you aren't going to be doing the thing that society needs, is not an option anymore. Not voting for Biden means you're voting for Trump. Is an argument that takes away the power of the vote and makes it so the change that we need can't possibly happen, because the only people who can truly vote are corporations.
Right, but even if we got our guy in there, how does he get money from billionaires that hold the money?
Well, because it wouldn't be we got our guy, it would be that we got our guy to be president, and also all the senators and Congress people, because their voting is compromised in the exact same way. Like, we have to vote for Joe Biden or we are bad and going to hell, and they have to vote for whatever the corporation is telling them to vote for, or they're going to be in fucking hell as well, in actually a much more real way than we are. You know,
Because they'll be executed and then go to the real hell.
We have to do what fucking Iceland did and get rid of everyone and install a completely new government, and that's never going to happen because we're way too big.
And because we have a lot of faith in the fact that we're just right around the corner. We just win this one battle, and then it'll be easier. We just get Trump out, and then it'll be easier. We just get whatever, whatever the one thing that we're dealing with right now. There's like so much emphasis put on like
the lone gunman.
We'll be relieved after this, and then shit will just fall into place.
Yeah.
Well, that's the mode that we're in. Like, capitalism is very short-sighted, and if the motivation is the next quarter, then you don't. That's all you got to focus on.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about.
Well, billionaires aren't like that. Billionaires think in like terms of 100 years. Like billionaires do not think in terms of quarters. Billionaires think in terms of like centuries. So,
right. Their employees think in terms of quarters.
Capitalism is short-sighted. I would say that there is an intentional like short-sightedness placed on the populace.
Yeah.
They're running the game, the short-sighted game up front, and the long-sighted game is very quiet in the back.
Yeah. There's different sets of rules.
Yeah.
It's messed up, but I'm curious if this concept of stimulus, though, is going to kind of, I don't know, create some shift in consciousness a little bit. Like, I've never got a stimulus before in my life.
No, you did.
Last year.
George Bush gave us one.
Yeah, George Bush gave us one.
George W. gave us one, and it was like confounding at the time.
I don't remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very weird. It was like this, it was like the George Bush prize. You elected me, so now I'm just going to give everyone money because that helps the economy.
It was in like 2005. It's because Clinton had a surplus, and so he was like, "I'm going to take this Clinton surplus and give it right to you."
Yeah. It's all right.
Which almost definitely went.
But now you see people who are like. Now you see like an argument, in the public where, at least on Twitter, where people are like, the government could give us $2,000 a month. Other governments do it.
Civilized governments do it.
That's its concept. Like, that's something that the government's capable of technically, and I don't know, like, if it's a big deal or whatever, but I am curious, like, if in the coming years that concept will sort of shape, I don't know, aspects of society. Like,
it's interesting because like something like a UBI, I bet we've probably talked about this before.
We definitely have.
We've been at this club for a long time now.
Yeah,
but
we probably talked about UBI.
My biggest thing about UBI is that unless it's a part of a package that involves rights around other things, namely, first and foremost, healthcare and other shit, that unless it also is a part of a larger package that includes like healthcare, transportation rights, fucking education, like all these different things, unless all the housing, unless all the housing rights, unless all those things are tied up into this package, UBI is strictly like hush money so that people don't.
Yeah. So like
I'm against UBI as a sole thing.
Right.
I think it's actually like a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah, it needs to be part of a whole constellation of government.
Yeah. It seems troubling.
It's literally like, what's the least I can give you where you won't burn my house down?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what welfare is. And I mean, I'm pro welfare, but that's what David Simon describes welfare in Baltimore as exactly that it was like a contract with East and West Baltimore, where it was like, we'll give you the minimum amount of money that you can live with and or do whatever you want with, like buy drugs. Just like don't burn our houses down. and then it kind of worked. That's how it's described in the corner.
The stimulus is a problem here. It's like really incompatible with the way our news works, where like whatever crisis is upon us has to be the worst one that ever happened. So if we get stimulus now because this is like a crazy crisis that blows away the crises of the past, our next crisis is going to have to be worse than this one, and so we're going to always have this feeling of like, well, but we get stimulus when shit is really bad.
Well, that's one of the biggest reasons why, I'm sure that I've talked about this, but it's like my entire theory about the Democrats in general is that they can't afford to set a precedent that they could accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Because then you'll expect them to accomplish something. And that's why they're not going to fight they're not going to fight any of these Supreme Court people. They're not going to fight that hard for like, they don't want to have a supermajority in the government. Like, they're happy to have, because they can sit around and blame Mitch McConnell and blame the Supreme Court. Like, oh well, we would really like to do universal health care, but I mean, look at the Supreme Court we got right now. Like,
Well, and
they
also-
love this shit. They fucking love this shit. They have to be the underdog too. Like, that's like part of their thing. That's like the only way they can do it. Like,
Almost-
well, if you guys gotta vote for us because we just need a little, we're out here fighting the good fight from McConnell.
Exactly. It almost being able to solve the problem helps your fundraising more than solving the problem does.
Such fucking garbage. They're so garbage. I hate them.
They're useless. They're completely useless, all of those people.
I fucking hate them so much.
They make
I use
so
the
much
same
money.
philosophy on my
Why?
report card, where I would only work to get a C, because if I got an A, then I would be expected to get an A again. So to stay at C's, you have that be the plateau, then you have a reasonable
That's my
amount of
whole
work to do.
professional identity too.
Yeah. I think Hunter S. Thompson talks about this at some point. I can't remember what he said. He has something about just doing enough to get by. Whatever. Fuck Hunter S. Thompson. Anyway, what happens in Gene Wolfe?
Yeah, somebody say something. Is there anything in the chat right now?
No, I just put links to all the stuff we were talking about, which I thought was really brilliant, but there's no people in there. It's just links and a tumbleweed blowing around.
They have not followed it. They have not followed us today because it is no easy path.
It's fine. We're not doing this for them.
No. If they're around, hi. Hi, people.
It's January 3rd. It's a hard day for it.
I guess I'm curious, at the very end of the book, before he goes into his dwelling, he hears those voices.
Yeah.
Really interesting to talk about.
It's a very nice, a really super nice way to end this book, especially in this chapter. We start with Crane, who is a fully political atheist kind of guy. We get to Auk, who's religious, but we're experiencing him in this chapter entirely through the needle and through this like very hard science. And then the next thing that happens is Silk is like, who am I? Is this book even about a religious guy anymore?
Yeah. We get to see Silk's identity splitting.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, and so it's like a metaphor for that. He's listening to his own words.
Yeah.
And he's no longer identifying with that old self. He realizes he's changing.
And this,
and we'll see that more.
Yeah, the
That's
story is
kind of how
changing.
the bicameral mind works.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that theory in this group before, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, he's hearing the voice of God is coming from a part of you, but it's a part that you don't identify with.
Yeah, it's the same thing as theophany.
And of course, there's a needler, hard, unmysterious explanation in that the guy who we've been told does impressions of him is doing an impression of him. we know it's been mentioned at least twice that Horn does impressions of Silk when he's not around.
Yeah.
But of course, it's very easy. I feel like on your first read through to not be thinking of that at fucking all while Silk is having his identity crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
And he goes in with the gun drawn
Yeah.
against himself.
I think that Ock's faith makes sense with his description of the practicalities of the Needler, because I think Ock's faith is strong because it is a very practical, folksy faith.
Motherfucker is Wolfe. That's Wolfe self-insertion.
Sure. Yeah, it has that whole Tolkien, long live the Shire kind of feel to it, of like, I'm a product of this, I have an understanding of this practically, and that is my spirituality. That is my... It's also a very Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance kind of look at spirituality, I think.
Go on.
Like, the romantic meaning of the machine, the poetry of the machine is connected to the classical engineering of the machine, and so, like, the person who just wants to get on the bike to ride but doesn't understand the machine isn't going to get on the bike and ride quite as well as a person who understands the machine, has built the machine, and then gets on the bike and ride. And the person who only is building the machine and only looks at it as the machine will also never get on the bike and ride because they're not inclined to it. But
I feel that so hard with this new car.
Yeah, you're very. I feel like
working on it a lot. I've been working on it a lot, and now I understand these systems, and also just the way that car works. It's it trains you to drive it in this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very idiosyncratic, it has a personality, it's kind of. But I do feel like, I mean, it's definitely true that I feel like machines like that are they're I always think of, I mean, I have weird relationships with my cars or whatever, but I always think of them kind of like dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You get to know them and they have these personalities, and they're very close to being alive, actually. They have respiratory systems and circulatory systems, and they have they're quirky. They're weird and quirky.
I think of them as leeches that are draining my money away from me.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely can be that.
Yeah,
that's what a car is.
Well, the less of that, that's another thing. The less of that Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance relationship you have with the car, the more it is also that.
Totally, exactly.
Yeah.
And this relationship is something that I definitely have a hard time with. I have a very difficult time connecting mine to the physical world. And I also, I have practical problems as a result of it.
Speaking of PP.
Anyway, so I think that's very much Ock's kind of spirituality. We always we went to him for technical consultation on how to break into a house too. He's a very practical man, as well as and that includes his spirituality.
It's interesting that he takes Silk under his wing so hard, and so naturally too. He seems to know more about what's coming for Silk than Silk does himself. Silk doesn't necessarily know that he needs to, have all these weapons and needs to be proficient in fencing or sword fighting. But Ock seems to see that in Silk's future.
I feel like there's a thing, and this I may very well be projecting here, but I feel like there's a thing where, as a practical person, Ock takes responsibility for Silk, an impractical person, because it's more practical to have Silk be taken care of than to have Silk be wandering around lost in his own mind and get killed and have that weighing on his conscience. You know.
And I think awkward.
And I think that's a way that the space-headed like end up as this natural burden to the practical. But I think that it's just a thing that practical people naturally do, is like identify like this person is worthwhile, but they can't take care of themselves. I'm just going to push them in the right direction every once in a while and make sure they don't die.
I relate to that so hard.
Yeah, I yes, of course you do.
Alk also, I think, sees the value in having a Mantian with a Patera at it, and this is the Mantian in the neighborhood, and this is the Patera they got. So, you know, I think Alk sees a little bit of responsibility to taking care of Silk, because that's the guy who's going to teach all the sprats about the gods.
Exactly.
You need that.
There's a practical reason that this person should be taken care of.
Yeah.
They can't do it themselves, so I'll just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I take care of shit, you know. That's what I
He's
do.
not just taking care of Silk, though. He's also preparing Silk for combat. You know, it's interesting. Like,
Well, that's
he
part of taking
foresees
care of
conflict.
Silk, I think.
And also, I think
I
to
guess he
Alk,
sees
the
that
successful job is way more impressive to Alk than it is to Silk. Silk is just like, yeah, I got through that through the skin of my teeth, and I think Alk is like, this dude this guy is talented.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's true. And then we actually see that more specifically and more intentionally with the sword fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's when we get a sense. Oh, and we can tie it all back together. That like Silk is more remarkable than he has let us know as readers.
And that he will ever take credit for. He'll never take credit for being remarkable. If something good happens, it's because of a god, or because maybe he paid attention to the god at the right time. That's his only contribution, is noticing a god when he was supposed to notice them.
Yeah, but he actually is like a level 20 rogue.
And to a degree, this is a manifestation of Silk being eminently present, too. Like, I don't know if this is... Like, celebration requires you being locked in a moment in the past. And anticipation requires you to be locked in a moment that's in the future. But Silk's just eminently wondering about this current moment. And so he can't celebrate or anticipate properly, because he's just constantly, he has so many questions about what's happening right now.
And sword fighting is a nice, I feel like a nice symbol for, he keeps repeating throughout that sequence that there's no time to think, that he can't think. Things are happening, and they have to happen before he can even think about them. And I think there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot happening when he says, like him repeating that. I feel like that's part of Silk all day long, is like not thinking.
I think it's what the Zen Buddhists call zazen.
I guess there's a little bit in Tao Te Ching along those lines too, of like, if you're thinking about it, it's not the thing. The thing is before you think about it.
Non-doing or non-action.
Non-action, yeah.
Pooh, the uncarved block. But I mean, like that. We can also find this in the Christianity of Gene Wolfe. Like the season of Advent and the season of Lent is both a time that you're supposed to empty out your heart, so that there is room for the Lord to come into it. And I think that at its heart is that Taoist concept of like, and particularly with the Essene community, like being a vessel for the Lord. Emptying out desire and your own goals, to make room for the goals of what God as community needs. I think that's the same thing. That's also kind of describing what a hero is, I think.
This is jumping back a little bit. There's at the end of the crane, or near the end of the thing, he takes his secret government message and he puts it in a little cheapo statue of Sphinx, and
Yeah.
and so there's like this degraded representation of what religion is in this world at this time. That it's tchotchkes, the little household idols, and this is like he's basically sending like a message in a little, I guess for analog to us right now would be like a cheaply made Chinese god, or a little Chinese crucifix or something.
Those little Buddhas that are always.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yeah, one of these things that you can get for like $8 with no problem or branding or thought for religion, and that's what he's sending. And in a way, Sphinx is to Silk, Sphinx is there and active and integral to this thing that he's doing, this secret message. And it's not necessary for Crane to have any respect. He can even have disrespect for the idea that there's like something divine happening, but it is, in that we know how Silk sees it, and we know that these gods are in mainframe. And I think this is how Wolfe looks at atheists in our real world, is that they're kind of like sleepwalkers in a mainframe that does have a better explanation than just like there's a magic beard guy, but is also
totally
serving
feel
that function.
Way about atheists, atheists are still playing out a story. They just think that they aren't playing out a story, but they still are. That is the practical reality of God. God is the patterns that our society. God is those 11 stories, and we play to those stories because they're hardwired. Our brains have been wired by those stories. That is what God is.
When we did Chronotony and I was on mushrooms at the Fields Fest, I feel like that was the thing I came out at the end, was this feeling of like, freedom isn't throwing the script away, because it's impossible to throw the script away. But if you do a play with the same script over and over again, you find so many things in it that you have freedom with. You find so many ways to do things differently, or to do them better, or you find slightly new situations. And there's something about doing that play over and over again in the same night on mushrooms where I was like, this is exactly what life, this is like the most clearest feeling of what like freedom in life means that I had ever personally felt.
Yeah. That was definitely a Dionysian ecstatic pursuit, that play.
How long? It was like 27 minutes or 22 minutes long. How long was it? Was one run of it?
One run was about 20 minutes.
20 minutes? It felt, time. What is time?
Yeah. The longest we did it for 3 hours. 6 rotations.
That's it?
Yeah. That was a long time, dude.
It was a long time, but it also feels like 6. Oh, surely it was more than 6.
Right, exactly, because you totally leave time.
Yeah.
Like,
every time is like
this weird dance.
Yeah, like the first time is the first time, but the second time is the first time and the second time. So now you're at 3, and then the third time is like what? It's like that's how the feeling of doing that play over and over again consecutively felt. Is like each time was not just once; it was that and all that had come before it.
Which for me is very similar to reading Wolfe.
Yeah. One of the the first things that, like, the biggest impression I got when I first read this the first time was how funny it is that we say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like, this book really, I feel like, points out that is incredibly funny, and we don't think about it at all.
About the religious origin of our weekday names?
Yeah, and the fact that it's not just that, like, oh, there's this pantheon of gods that we arbitrarily call the days. It's also the 7 planets that are visible, or the 7 heavenly bodies that are visible. Mm-hmm. And it is actually really funny that people would go, but it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing.
one thing that stands in the way of the idea of expanding the weekend is that we have a 2-day weekend because there's 5 wandering planets and then 2 luminaries, the sun and the moon. Like the weekend should be Sunday,
Monday.
That's why Monday sucks. It's because it should be the weekend.
Mm-hmm. But they're so scared of Saturn energies that they're like, everybody should stay home on Saturday.
Right. But yeah, so that's why we have a 2-day weekend.
It does make sense. Friday you have your pinnacle like sensuous experience, and then Saturday you need to recover from the hangover. You have your experience of the god that cuts down.
The lead god. Get the lead out. The Zep. Any Led Zeppelin fans out there?
Not
Yeah.
really.
And,
I couldn't.
Are you asking
Was that? Yeah, I'm asking the entire. I'm leave a comment if you like Led Zeppelin. I also am not a Led Zeppelin fan.
I don't mind them.
I like Led Zeppelin okay. I wouldn't call myself like a fan.
I just don't know a single thing about them. I don't feel like I know the entirety of the song Stairway to Heaven.
They're into Tolkien.
Yeah.
They're into Aleister Crowley.
They like some cool ass shit.
That one guy choked on his puke, and then the Helena Bonham Carter happened.
Wait, like
What?
Isn't she?
Helena Bonham Carter came from his puke?
No, isn't she? I mean, Bonham, right? John Bonham was the drummer of Led Zeppelin. Surely he's some kind of father or uncle to her, right?
I don't know.
I don't think that's the case.
Did you say surely because just because they have the same name?
Yeah. I know 2 famous Bonhams, and their ages would align, I think, to make some kind of niece or daughter situation. It's just always made her more magical to me to believe that, so I have.
Possible.
I'm definitely not saying you didn't believe that.
Both British.
I think that Tolkien is better than Moorcock, but I think that Hawkwind is better than Led Zeppelin.
Whoa. Hawkwind is hard to argue with, though. Hawkwind fucking rules.
Yeah, Hawkwind is pretty tight.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Moorcock sang with Hawkwind.
Yeah,
I don't
he does
think
that
Tolkien
like
ever
poem,
sang
right?
with Led Zeppelin.
Whoa, instead of Lemmy stood aside so that Michael Moorcock could be the vocalist?
Or they made like a record with it.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's the first one, I think.
Wait a minute, is that the one
first
I've heard?
studio album. It's pretty cool. Like, there's like a Moorcock poem, I think on like track 2 or 3, I want to say, or he actually like reads it. And there's all this like space sounds behind him. He's like, I forget, like something like the wizard with his sword, the wizard with his sword.
Big influence on my friend Ben Fergal.
Oh, yeah.
Man, what
I
happened?
thought you didn't like Ben Fergal.
No, he's still my friend.
But you don't like him.
Yeah, I got friends I don't like. I feel like that's a product of my collegiate experience. There's some people that I recognize, like, we are definitely in a community together. I can't stand you, but we are connected in a bosom way.
Yeah.
What is
That's pretty healthy, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I'm not really capable of being in communities with people I don't like. So
It's a result of a tribalism, for sure. But I don't think I had anything further to say.
what does the man do now?
Ben Fergal, he's trapped in Philly someplace. He was playing a show right when the quarantine struck. He was going to be playing a show around here, I thought.
As a musician?
yeah, he's an evil.
Yeah, Evil Sword, his band Evil Sword. Or wait, no, Magic Sword. Evil Sword was on the Thor 3 soundtrack.
No, it's Evil Sword.
It is Evil Sword. Magic Sword was on the Thor 3 soundtrack. Jordan, am I right on this?
I have no idea.
I thought you loved Thor 3.
Jordan, no,
I do love Thor 3, but I don't know anything about the soundtrack.
Oh, well, you should check it out. It's real good.
Well, Evil Sword is pretty tight.
I thought that Fergal was primarily a visual artist. Is that wrong?
He no.
He
He
has
does
it
do
all.
visual. He does a bunch of tape. I don't know if he's still working with tape drawings, but he definitely is also a visual art. And like he does visual art stuff through his band a lot. But he definitely loves having a band. He's always been in a band.
Interesting. I never.
They have puppets and stuff that they do. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
not a purely musical project.
I put a link in the chat to them playing at the Crown 4 years ago. 5 years.
Nice.
I was at that show.
It's very like visually they've put a lot of effort into it in a way that I very much like for bands to do. You know, there's no reason to build a whole set for your show at the Crown, and they did it. I really like that. What does Fergal play in this band?
Ace.
Okay. I played Magic cards with them at the Charles with you back then, Connor. That was like the only real exposure I had to this man. But for some reason, I guess because of the way he dressed, I always assumed he was like a sculptor.
I actually had a zine of his. It's like alternate rules for chess. That I never played, and then my dog recently ate.
Nice.
Wow.
I mean, Ben Fergal made all the costumes for nuclear power plants.
Oh,
So in that way, he is a sculptor.
Okay. All right.
I don't think you're off base with your analysis of his style.
Interesting. I'm
But
excited.
like so many visual artists, he also wants to be a rock star. I'm
Many are
looking at
called,
you,
few are
David
chosen.
Byrne. What?
Many are called, few are chosen.
Right, exactly. And sometimes you can't tell if you're chosen or if you're even really being called.
Who plays Ziphius in the movie of the mind? For
The
everyone?
guy from whoever played it in Game of Thrones. Whoever played Arya's.
Oh, God.
Oh, I
can't-
love that guy. Huh.
I can't not see it because all sword instructors in these kind of like movies are all the exact same personality.
Yeah,
Like a
totally.
scrappy old guy who teaches you like, never trust the rules. Like it's the same lesson every time.
See, I feel like that guy's not old enough. I think of, I just watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and I feel like the guy who plays Socrates is visually what I see when I see.
Just
Ziphius.
generic bearded man.
Well, like big puff of white hair, but bald on top, and like constantly like really excited and like yes.
I was seeing the guy from Kill Bill.
Pai Mei.
Pai Mei. That's who when I read it this time, I couldn't get Pai Mei out of my head.
Definitely a Pai Mei type figure. There's that like that sort of like cleverness that they're gonna like get you to do a thing and then show you how you're wrong about it, and then like move their eyebrows or whatever.
I think that because of his name, I was thinking of him as a Mediterranean-looking guy. He's got such a Greek name. I thought of him as a Greek,
A one-legged
like
Greek.
Socrates.
Same.
And like the guy from Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I thought he was Spanish.
I mean, no, you're thinking
Mediterranean-ish.
you're thinking of someone else. I think.
I'm thinking of the
Dornish?
Swordmaster of Bravos from season 1, Arya's dancing instructor.
Right. You don't.
I
think
thought of him as Spanish. Bravos is Spain. I thought.
No.
1-to-1, Bravos is Spain.
No, it's wherever the Martells are from, the southernmost zone. That's Spain.
I thought Dorne was Spain. I thought the Dornish people. Yeah. Oh, those are the Martells. Yeah.
Every place outside of it's all Spain. Every place is Spain.
You don't think that a place called Bravos is maybe Greek?
You don't think that a place called Bravos is maybe Greek?
I do think that. That's what I'm saying.
That's my point.
Somehow everyone came out of that looking fine. It was almost a Ziphius-like way that you alluded to being completely wrong. Very impressive.
Thank you very much. I've been watching a lot of Looney Tunes lately, and DuckTales.
Oh, I've been watching Looney Tunes too. It's so good.
Looney Tunes is the best.
What's Looney Tunes 2?
Lady Jane's cave.
Well,
Nudity.
Quackbusters might be considered Looney Tunes too, in a way.
It's got adult situations and a lot of
Anne
profanity.
has a classics cartoon channel on her Roku, so I've been watching all kinds of old cartoons. Some of them are shit.
I like those real old silly symphony ones where people talk like and like everyone's moving all the time. Like nobody can stand still in those.
I mean,
those
they're
ones.
animated; they might as well be moving.
Or else they'd just be a picture.
I really want to get some mind-altering substances and watch some of those very, very old, like washed-out cartoons where everything's moving all at once.
I used to love those shits when I was a kid.
I love all those old, like the Fleischer Brothers cartoons where it's.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing the old Superman cartoons in the theater at the On Center in Syracuse. It was a fucking amazing experience. No, at the Civic Center. Hashtag Civic Center Syracuse.
Oh, here's another quote from this chapter that I really like. Is when Ziphius is taunting Auk, and he says, "Not made of money, are you, Auk? A good thief, but a poor man. Isn't that what they say about you?" That's such a great burn.
Yeah.
And it tells us, it solidifies for me what I'm supposed to think of Auk. He's a good thief, but a poor man. That's fucking cool.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's Robin Hood, right?
Yeah.
If everything you steal, you give away, that's Robin Hood.
There's a sadness to it in this formulation, in that like Robin Hood is. When I say Robin Hood, I think he's getting a lot of acclaim, and for some reason, when Ziphius says it about Auk right here, I don't think Auk's getting any credit from anyone for it. In fact, they're kind of looking down on him. That's what they say about him. He's a good thief, but a poor man. What's his deal?
But the reality of the plot, I think, is otherwise. People like Auk is constantly networking and working with people. He knows everybody. He's a man about town. He's the mayor. You know, people are going to help Auk, even if they're like, oh, poor little. I mean, like that's part of it. It's what we were talking about before. The practical responsibility that Auk is taking for Silk, other people take for Auk because they recognize that he is a good man and therefore of value. And this is the network that binds a society together. The Newman of it all. You know, this ability for us to take responsibility for others when we are in a situation where we can do that. Human.
It's interesting that Wolfe focuses this onto a criminal. That like we've got the practical needler understanding guy, we've got the dude who goes to church and gets shriven, and it's all meeting on a man whose primary identity is criminal.
Well, that dances around a Christian, the whole good thief thing, the dude that got killed with Jesus, you know, like
there's a good thief and there's a bad thief.
That whole no redemption without sin, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been called, this chapter called me back a lot to that writing in the Krasmologics that he randomly turned to recently. That's talking about how like men create their own suffering and it is always sufficient, and that's what propels. We talked about this last time. You know, that's what propels people forward. Is there would be no movement forward without obstacles.
I mean, I feel like we talked about this a little bit this time. Yeah.
That seems to be a major theme that Wolfe is poking here. Mm-hmm. This idea that, like, and I think this goes back to what Crane saying humans weren't meant to live here. That, like, there's the other side of it is Auk. There's, like, the Crane who's going to do a spy mission and fix things and make them the way they're supposed to be, and then there's the opposite of that is Auk, who is going to do his best to play his part in a thing that he doesn't question really, because it's holy.
His practicality allows him to adapt to an evolving situation because He has practical reactions to what is actually happening.
And his religion survives because of that. Silk couldn't do it on it. Silk couldn't take care of himself. Ock has to bring him forward.
He becomes the Moses figure. He becomes the hero of the picture.
I also want to think that Wolfe fancies himself like a criminal.
A smooth criminal.
Like Wolfe sees himself as a bridge between science and practical stuff and religion. And then there's something also that Wolfe sees in himself that it makes him a criminal.
Right. He's trying. He views his quest as Promethean. Steal fire from the science gods and bring them to the weirdos.
Yeah, and I guess it works the other way too, is to bring the fire of spirituality to the science people, right?
Sure.
He can go both ways. I like Gene Wolfe.
It's a psychopompic quest in a way, ushering those souls together.
I wish you would have gotten the chance to see like some of our Long Sun episodes. Wouldn't that be a trip if he had watched them?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Sadly, he cannot.
Beanie.
Well, maybe he's watching them now.
From heaven, from mainframe.
Screwing up someone else's browser history. At one of the free kiosks in heaven.
A hacker in heaven.
The what?
A hacker in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, you always get to that point in cyberpunk books.
Heaven?
Yeah, you always get to that point where you hack the Gibson and meet the AI and find out that humanity is something you have no understanding of, and then the AI goes off to touch other networks around other stars. You know, that's a climax of cyberpunk.
Zion.
Cyberpunk novel. I think.
Zion.
Sure. Yeah. The end of the third Matrix when he talks to that big face made out of machines.
I was thinking of Rasta Satellite and Neuromancer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. When they go and invade meet Wintermute, and Wintermute goes off to talk to the aliens.
Yeah. Oh, here's another good quote from this one. It's when he's listening to the impressions of himself. All gods were good, but might not the unfathomable outsider be good in a dark way? Mm-hmm. Which is interesting to think of coming from a man who's talking about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Is it true Jesus could be good in a dark way? That is a tantalizing thing you don't hear often formulated by Christians.
Jesus has to be good in a dark way, I think.
He can't save.
Right? He conquers death. He dies for everyone's sin. Like, Jesus has to be dark.
I love the harrowing of
heaven.
heaven.
Like he also means I don't feel like he means like the dark side, but maybe like more mysterious, like concealed. Mm. And I think that's kind of central to what Christianity, right? Like the idea that God is working. You may not understand it, but God's working behind the scenes with his big plan. And like Silk might be having that realization for the first time, whereas his current gods are a little bit more upfront about their intentions and their personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also dark, like the term dark, like the stream goes dark too.
Yeah.
The outsider is the god that is working when the screens are off.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool sentence he just said right there.
Yeah, he's kind of the god of the turned off screen.
That's a god I need right now. Tell you what.
well, so we wandered into an interesting thing here. So for the Egyptians, that god would be Apep or Apophis, who is the unmaking of the universe. He's trying to eat the whole world. The evil protects good from the unmaking, which is Apophis. And I've always had a hypothesis about Apophis, who kind of evolved out of, like, the first creator god is Atum, who's the snake of sunset. But then as Ra becomes a more popular sun god, that sunset serpent becomes Apep, the unmaking of the universe. They demonize the previous creator god. And I've always had this interpretation of the Apep myth of him trying to eat the whole universe, that he used to be the god of everything, and then these new gods came and started splitting up the universe into further and further gods. And Apep is just trying to reintegrate everything to be one thing again, and that's why he's trying to swallow it. And I feel like The Outsider kind of has a similar story.
Yeah, that makes sense. The unity god.
And I think it, to a degree, goes...
everything god. What's the deal? Why do we need all these little micro gods?
Right. I think that this kind of goes back to Tolkien and the Silmarillion and the Song of Iluvatar, where like the gods exist in the void outside of the world that they create, which is that which exists. So in this way, the gods don't exist, but they are these non-existent things are the things that create that which does exist. I think it's a similar thing.
Yeah, which is a very Neoplatonic theme.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm a Gnostic.
I think the first 2 or 3 or so chapters of Silmarillion are kind of like, if you don't ever read any other Tolkien, those would be the ones I'd say. Read the first couple, maybe even just like the first 2 chapters of Silmarillion are kind of, I don't know, amazing in a way that there's not a lot like them.
It's my favorite Tolkien.
Yeah. I've never finished the whole book, but the beginning I've read many times.
Yeah, same. But I read an interesting little factoid that, like, after The Hobbit was successful, Tolkien's editor asked him to write a sequel set in the same world, and so Tolkien submitted the Silmarillion, and his editor was like, "What the fuck is this? No." And so then he wrote Lord of the Rings, but that the Silmarillion was kicking around, for a long time, even after that, and eventually got published. I think in the 70s.
And before he published The Hobbit, he had done, I'm pretty sure it was before, he did a translation adaptation of the Nibelungenlied, or parts of it. Yeah. And he also did one of the story of Kalervo, which is a character from the Kalevala, the Finnish epic.
Right.
So he had been monkeying around with other people's epic myths a little bit before he did his own.
That's where he's drawing the bulk of his influence from. We talked about that last time, but I don't feel like Tolkien comes from the Burroughs / weird tales pulp background that Moorcock does. Tolkien's coming straight out of ancient.
Yeah, the names in Silmarillion are all super Finnish sounding.
Yeah. He loves the Finns.
They're cool. They made some cool shit.
Yeah. They're strange, man.
Some of the best electronic music in the world has come from Finland, I think.
Finnish death
Monty
metal.
Python sang a song about Finland.
I was just thinking about that.
What is their song?
Finland, Finland.
The country where I want to be eating breakfast or dinner or snack lunch in the hall. Great, you should check it out.
It's just like the argument of the song is just that Finland isn't a thing. It's like a non-thing.
There's a whole verse about how far away it is from other countries.
Yeah, exactly.
So somebody who doesn't really know anything about Finland writing a song about Finland.
Yeah, your mountains so lofty, your treetops so tall.
All I know about Finland is that the guy who runs the hydraulic press channel is from there. And he has a great time.
They have that thing where some parts of the year it's dark all the time, right? I think they're in that zone.
Yeah, they're definitely in that zone.
That makes you weird.
I'd like to tell my Finland anecdote now. When I was working in market research, I think I might have even told this anecdote in this group already, but sorry.
I don't remember.
When I was working in market research, you would have a thing called a control question, or an articulation question, which you'd ask to see if people can talk extemporaneously about things. And often it was, if you could write a book about anything, what would you write about and why? You also had a group of demographic questions, which were always moderately offensive, where you're asking people their age and their racial identification, their ethnic identification. On one occasion, I was taking a man through demographic questions, and I asked him his ethnic identification. He said Finnish, and I said, for the purposes of this survey, I'm going to mark that as Caucasian. And he said, no, don't. Finns aren't Caucasians. I have a huge problem with that. Don't do that. So I said, okay, and did it anyways, and just didn't want to know. But then when we got to the articulation question, I said, if you could write a book about anything, what would it be about and why? And he was like, I would write a book about how Finnish people aren't Caucasians and how annoying it is that no one understands that.
I love that.
And that's my most direct contact with Finland.
Well,
That's hilarious.
Most white people aren't Caucasians.
Exactly.
It's hilarious.
Doesn't actually mean that much unless you're like
From the Caucasus?
yeah, unless you're from like southern Russia, right?
Right. Well, there's a slang use of the word Caucasian that is white people. And then there is an anthropological
Technically,
definition, which is from that one particular Black Sea region.
Glad that we use slang as an official identifier.
Well, I mean, black people, white people is not like any better.
True.
It's insane to me that at no point has anyone ever stood up and be like, "How about let's not do black and white anymore. Let's not do it."
Well, I mean, I think a big issue with like trying to not use black or whatever is that a lot of black folks don't actually know their heritage because they were kidnapped. You know, like their ancestors.
Right, but that is entirely separate from the argument of is there a type of person who is black, and why is it the word black? You know, like you bring all of the, like we have black and white had connotations before anyone was called a black person or a white person, and we trip on them.
Language to describe people's skin color is like a really interesting and deficient problem in language. Like, and it's there's no good one, and I think that's because at its root it's because you're trying to organize people by their skin color, which I think human beings are sort of just coming to realize is like not that useful and pretty problematic.
Yeah.
Way of grouping people and talking about people.
Just want to take a moment. This is a very interestingly pigmented group to have this conversation in.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say it.
We got all kinds of people in here.
Look, all I'm saying is that there's a lot to dig into with the concept of separating people into white and black. There's a lot to dig into there, and we don't really do it. We just kind of take it for granted that those are ways that people come.
Yeah, it's not good, and neither are any of the historical terms either, or the terms used like currently. Like what you hear now by a lot of people is like black and brown people, and I'm like, I don't know. It still makes me uncomfortable. We got to get more specific when we talk about people. You know, like you can't just say black and brown people. Expect that to mean a whole lot. But maybe I'm getting into like
it verges when it comes out of the mouths of like white politicians. It verges on miscellaneous. Like,
yeah.
It's like that's basically what it's being employed to mean a lot of times. Is like this group of things over here. You know, this drawer that's got all the stuff in it. I mean, just all the kitchen stuff you might need. That's not like the main kitchen stuff. It's in that drawer.
Yeah.
It's weird. Colors are like colors have a whole lot of power behind them, and it's all there every time you say it.
You ever seen the movie with Sean Penn? Colors?
No.
Oh, it's about gang colors. It's intense.
Oh.
And Sean Penn is in it?
Yeah.
In a way, it's.
What?
What gang is he in?
He's in the Cops.
Oh.
The worst gang of them all.
Yeah.
Deadliest.
I mean that is definitely part of this movie. Colors. There's a rap song at the end of it, and most of the words are the word color.
All right.
Is it one of those songs where they take every like figure of speech that has the word color in it and put it into the rap?
I don't really remember that much about it. I think it's a rare instance where the rap song at the end of the movie preceded the movie that was made.
So they made the movie about the song?
Huh?
They made the movie about the song?
I think that the rap song came first, and then they... I mean, that's a thing that happens.
It's an Ice-T song, I think.
Is it Ice-T? That might very well be. I just
Ice-T's
know that
the
most
best.
of the words are colors. Colors, 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 colors.
I haven't heard
Yep,
the song, but
it is
I've
Ice-T.
heard a version that is just the vocals with the music kicking out.
Oh,
How
wow.
random.
I love that. I am a nightmare walking, psychopath talking, king of my jungle, just a gangster stalking. It does say colors a lot. The hook is just colors, 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 like 14 times every time the hook comes. Oh, and at the end, it repeats the hook several times in a row. So
Yeah, exactly. I just remember watching credits for a long time and just the word colors being repeated over and over again, thinking that was amazing when I was like 11.
Colors, 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 colors.
Ice-T, what a life.
In a way, colors became my mantra for a while. Thanks, Ice-T.
Ooh, thank you.
Now,
Is it cold down there? You look very chilly.
At the time, I was really into wearing a shirt that proclaimed I was colorblind as well.
oh boy.
It turned out later on that I was, in fact, colorblind.
You didn't know it when you put the shirt on?
I didn't know it.
Cool. I like that.
How many colors are you blind about?
I'm red-green colorblind, which is tragic because my favorite color is green.
So does that mean that they both just look like brown?
It manifests in many odd ways. Like, like I actually have a lot of problems with purple and blue because of the redness of the purple.
What does it look like then?
Purple and blue look like one thing to me.
Oh,
This is also mitigated by I just don't see things often. Like if I got a thing that I'm looking for, my mind is going to edit it out of my vision so I don't see it. One time, I was going to go someplace with Dina and Mason, but I had to go to the bathroom first. I went to the bathroom, I came out, I saw Mason. I was like, where the fuck is Dina? Did she fucking leave without us? God damn her. And she was sitting right there. She was flabbergasted. She was right in front of me. I didn't see her at all.
Connor, this is not related, but it just occurred to me, is that Christmas tree behind you from last year, from last Christmas?
2019.
I don't feel like I have to answer that question.
I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
there's video evidence, I think, if you go and look at our Shadowrun streams.
yeah. We spent time talking about it in that room.
I still don't have to answer the question.
It's not a lie,
That's true.
right?
There's nothing wrong with it. It didn't catch on fire, so that's good.
Is it a living tree or was it a living tree?
I kept it alive for a long time, but I haven't been coming around here quite as much, and everything's dead.
Oh, all right.
But now I've started coming around again a much more. Everything's still dead, though.
Right.
Can't
I'm
do
not
anything.
ET.
Gotta get into necromancy.
God damn it. I have a problem.
I'm glad that we got a callback to that at the end of the episode. It's very Seinfeldian.
Well, Jordan is nothing if not Seinfeldian.
Hey.
Yeah, I always think of Wolfpack as a 3-hour Seinfeld episode.
You mean it's about nothing?
Who-
6 storylines.
Does that mean each person can be matched up to a character from Seinfeld?
Oh, Ryan loves this type of thing. You love
Love, yeah.
Comparative religion.
Yeah, it's comparative religion and it's also stunt casting. Two things that I really like.
Who do you think?
Is there any anti-Seinfeldians in this group? Mark?
Imagine
Oh, I
that.
love Seinfeld.
Okay.
I don't know why though. I'm Jewish, so I'm not allowed to not like.
Is that part of the law?
Required.
As far, I mean, I think that it's more of like just factual reality.
I like
There-
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
There was a
she
guy-
identifies to the world depicted by those neurotic Jewish people.
Yeah, I heard this guy talking, saying that like Seinfeld's popular in India, and that like,
Because they had that one Indian episode.
well, no, but like apparently the character of George is like an archetype in Indian culture as well. Like, there's like a word I forget. There's like some analog there.
I love it.
But
Erotic.
the point of what they were talking about was just that like these are like universal characters.
Whoa, in the chat, John O'Neill has dropped this bombshell. Ice-T has synesthesia. True story.
I
Huh.
didn't know that.
Wow,
That makes that song very different.
Yeah, exactly. Whole new meaning
Colors.
for that song.
Wow.
Colors.
Love that.
He's just pointing at everything. Colors.
Seeing the word colors does.
Synesthesia can come in different forms, right? Like it's not necessarily visual always.
Yeah.
Right. I just now know that I have no idea what he's talking about when he says colors over and over.
He's talking about feelings.
Do you think the word colors invokes something in him?
Be cool if
I
he.
don't know what he means by colors. That's
Maybe he means smells.
Maybe he means time. I was recently reading a thing about somebody who experiences months as different colors.
I experienced months as different versions of the bulletin board from elementary school classroom.
Yeah, which you know what that is? Color.
Sometimes.
Color.
Color.
Sometimes it's a hand that's been traced, and you add turkey parts to it.
Sometimes it's a bunch. So since we only have like 10 minutes left, and we started this conversation, who are the Seinfeld
Who are they?
of Wolfe?
Well-
I've been diagnosed as a Kramer before, but I wouldn't want to claim that myself.
Did we already establish that Jordan is Jerry?
Well, I like Jerry.
I think.
Because it's okay that good things happen to you.
Actually, that seems good.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty solid.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And everyone else is
'Cause
George.
you're kind of like the straight guy.
really? See?
Yeah, I think so.
That's cool.
I think Jen's also a Jerry in this case.
Jen is Jerry Stiller of this group.
Oh my god.
There are 6 of us. So I mean, someone's like a Newman, and someone's like
Does that mean I'm Elaine? Can I be Elaine?
I don't think you're Elaine. I'm sorry.
Why not?
Who is Elaine?
Might be me.
Yeah, I'm Elaine.
Obviously, everyone would want to be.
Who lives the closest to Towson?
I think that's me.
That's
Yeah.
Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Shit.
Would be Mark.
I was actually thinking maybe Mark is Elaine.
I think Mark's Elaine. He works in publishing.
What part of town do you live in, Mark?
Lauraville. I do.
That
work-
is close to Towson.
I
And
work-
again,
No, it's
works
not.
in publishing. like
It's,
Elaine.
Floraville is not close to us.
I mean,
It's closer than me.
It's easier to get to in a car.
He lived in Edgar Garden, so
It's easier to get to Towson in a car from Laurelville than it is from where we all live.
Who lives closer?
Well, it's easy to get to Towson from my house because it's just right up York Road.
Oh, well, yeah. York Road, the Mississippi River of Baltimore.
Yeah. I love that comparison. Now I feel like all the times I worked in Lutherville, I was Huck Finn.
Well, that I wrote, and when I was in high school, and I went to high school on York Road in Timonium, we had to do our like senior year English project. We had to write like a short story, and with a partner, and me and my partner wrote a story about that was like comparing hanging out on York Road as high school kids to the Mississippi River of Tom and Huck.
Wow.
We put so much profanity in our story that once we turned it in, the teacher gave it back and said, you need to take some of this profanity out. It's too much profanity. You can have some, but this is too much.
Wow, just like the A&R man.
Yeah, we were like, this is how we talk on the Mississippi River of York Road. We call each other dickheads all the time and say, fuck this shit. You're fucking shitting me.
Yep, but the censor's gonna have its way.
He was a good teacher, that guy. That teacher dressed and looked like Mark Twain.
Really?
Yeah, he had the
Whoa, that's
hat.
so cool.
He did like it wasn't like Ren Fair like level mustache and hair. It was like everyday Mark Twain, but it was honest. You saw him and you were like, hey, look, there's Mark Twain.
You know who else dresses and acts like Mark Twain? Val Kilmer in his one-man show about Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Can you see that online?
No, I did not see that.
Also,
Can you see it online? Can I see it online?
I don't know. I don't think so.
The evidence of it.
The
I put a handle
evidence.
on this basket.
It looks great.
good looking basket.
He looks
Nice
like you
candle.
could put a whole bunch of Reese pieces in there. None of them would fall out.
I think I'll use it as a mushroom basket.
Nice.
Solid
Or
mushroom.
give it to someone to use as a mushroom basket. 'Cause
That's
I
darling.
have a basket I got at the thrift store that I use as a mushroom basket, which is much nicer than any basket I will ever make.
If anyone sees you putting mushrooms into that basket, they are going to expect you to skip to the next mushroom, I think.
Yeah.
A tisket attack.
This is my current one. It has a leather
That's beautiful.
handle, and I strap my little knife with a rubber band.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome. That's so amazing.
I got this at the thrift store.
Yeah, it's beautiful though. You could make something like that. It's just colors. Colors.
Yeah. Okay.
Colors.
That's the theme of this episode.
Colors.
Hey, I don't want to. I just kind of want to put this out there that Monster Hunter Generations United or Ultimate or whatever the fuck is on sale for 60% off for I think 2 more days. In case you guys with the Switch wanted to play a game where we get to collaborate, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate,
Monster Hunter now a major motion picture in theaters.
starring Mila Jovovich.
That's right. The ultimate being herself.
I still do want to play Smash, but also like a game where we collaborate. That's like would
How
also.
much did it run?
It's $15.
Okay. Alright.
It's one of those.
I'll see what it-
It's one of those games where like you find yourself wanting to do chores so you can get another outfit. One of those kind of games.
That's how I play Cyberpunk 2077.
I do like outfit games.
It's an outfit game, and you also have cat sidekicks, which you can have up to 32, and you can outfits for them too.
What's the difference between Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, Monster Hunter Rise, and Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin?
Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate is the only one available for Switch for now until March
three
when the new
of-
one comes out.
The other one coming out later.
The next one will be called Rise, I think, for Switch, but I don't think any of them are on Switch except for Generations right now.
It's good. It's worth playing.
It's a taste. Like it's got kind of it's a little bit of a farmy, go collect resources, craft stuff game. It's weird. It's very Japanese. It's kind of like Pokemon, but you kill the Pokemon and then harvest their body parts to make outfits. And some of the Pokemon are really huge, so they're like, you should get your friends together, and you guys can all have a different. One guy's the bow guy, and one guy has a sword that's 3 times as tall as him, and you fight the giant monster, and like a Mexican flamenco song will play in the background while you fight him, because he's a fast monster.
It's exciting.
Yeah. I've never done it with other people before, but the shit was like 60% off, and I had a weird craving to put on a suit of armor.
You get that every once in a while.
Yeah, I want a dude with like a suit of armor on. That game seemed the cheapest way for me to get right there.
From watching New Mutants, I want to wear a suit of armor on just one arm.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Magic is so cool.
Yeah.
That's like if Michael Jackson was in the X-Men.
Anyway.
Well, I think we're done. I think we finished this book.
Now that we've done our advertisement for Capcom's game, The Monster Hunter, and the movie tie-in that's coming out too. See those things.
Oh, that's from Capcom? How interesting.
Yeah, it's Capcom, baby.
I remember Capcom commercials in comic books as a lad.
They gave us Street Fighter, didn't they?
You guys want to know what I'm going to do for the rest of the day today?
Star
What?
Trek?
I'm going to I watched one episode of Star Trek before bed every night. I am going to spend probably many hours juicing apples.
Ooh.
To make cider, hard cider. But
Hard cider?
Like, there's that free grocery store thing that's popped up since COVID. And April was posting April posted this picture of like 2 pallets of boxes of apples. It was like, anybody need like lots of apples? So I took 6 boxes of apples.
How long does it
boxes of apples?
Damn.
How long does it take to turn into a drinkable hard cider?
I mean, I would guess probably. I mean, drinkable is one thing. I mean, I probably will
look at it. Making some? What are you making something to look at? What else do you do?
Well, I mean, like
Smell it.
you can ferment things for longer or shorter periods.
Yeah.
But I think I'll probably go longer than shorter. So probably a few months.
Delayed gratification. It's a great
When
concept.
I was a child, my mom would buy apple cider in bulk to send in school lunches for me. And after a while, she noticed that I wasn't drinking it. She said, "Why are you not drinking this apple cider?" And I said, "It tastes funny." And she tasted it and found that it had all fermented because she had bought it in such bulk and was using it over a very long period of time. But it was like a couple months back.
Yeah, it'll definitely ferment. I've gotten jugs of it from like Weber Farms, and you wait too long on it, they'll get alky.
It'll get better.
Yeah, unless it's pasteurized.
Right. Oh yeah, I guess.
Oh yeah, we were buying it direct from the tree.
Yeah. If you get like unpasteurized whatever cider, then
We were living in the real world at that time.
I'm visualizing you and your mother as Shel Silverstein drawings going to the tree to buy the cider.
That's exactly what it was like.
But I think I'm gonna go for more of like a hooch kind of thing, like not like a carbonated, but like a drier, more like wine kind of thing.
Apple wine.
Sounds good.
I mean, I feel like I don't want to have to think about like carbonate. I feel like that's too complicated. Making carbonated things too complicated. If you want it to not be, if you don't care about it being carbonated, you can just let it ferment until it's done, and then bottle it.
You do you.
Yeah,
So anyway,
that's cool.
I'll be here juicing apples.
That's
Have a
great.
good time.
Tiny scissors.
They're very small.
You should save all the seeds and then plant them across the country.
Wow.
Oh,
Ooh,
Oh,
and put a pot on your head.
Yeah.
kill your wife.
That would only make crab apples, though.
Oh, really, Johnny Appleseed just planted crab apples?
Well, all apples that are like edible apples, all of those trees only ever come from grafting. You can't get, because they're all like hybrid bred, so like you can't like plant a seed and get an edible apple.
I didn't know that.
Apples are GMOs.
It's true for most, I think, like tree fruits.
Even Granny
Not all-
Smith.
Definitely not all, but like a lot of the like more common tree fruits are that way.
The reason apples are so popular in this country is because you could like ferment them into cider. Like that was the initial application of apples. It wasn't eating. It was
The
literally just for
The application.
I came here to say application.
They're very. I mean, I made my second ever pie a week or two ago.
out of apples.
Apple pie, and it was great. I was very happy.
Apple pie is great.
Apple pie is dope.
There's a reason that they always say apple pie when they're trying to say nice things about our country. That's one of the top ones up there.
I like pecan pie.
Pecan pie is great too. That's definitely like those are my top 2 pies.
You can eat a whole
Pecan
bunch of
pie is
apple
a southern
pie.
thing, though. Northerners can't appreciate pecan pie.
It's very
You know,
sweet,
I
so you can only
actually
have
not a
one
big-
slice.
I'm not a big fan. It's usually too sweet for me.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
So, like, I find it like kind of cloying.
It works well with coffee.
I got a real soft spot for ultra sweet southern pies. Yes, pie. Also,
Well, it's weird because I feel like I need like something on the back end. Like I love a lemon meringue, but it has that like tartness to it.
Yeah, that's why you have to have real black coffee with your pecan pie.
Yeah.
put some.
I could imagine. I mean, I have
Sounds
had
good.
them that I have liked, but I find that the ratio of examples that I've liked to examples that I haven't liked is not very high. Like, I don't like it more often than I like it. I feel like it has to be a really particular thing to
You
like
could probably do a version with like less sugar and more like molasses or something. That would be.
it. Yeah, I mean, like I'm saying, I have liked them before, but I just typically find that their usual style to be a little too clean. I love pie though. I love all the fruit pies. And I
don't
love
like blueberry pie.
pumpkin pie, sweet potato pie.
Pumpkin pie is good.
The first pie I ever made was a pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving.
Shit's good.
And it
Did
turned
you
out
make it from an actual pumpkin?
no. From what I've heard, it doesn't actually make enough of a difference for it to really matter.
Oh, I was gonna totally disagree with that. I think actually when you make it from a real pumpkin, it's like incredibly good. I also like a not from
Makes
a
sense.
pumpkin. I like all the pumpkin. That's an example of a pie that's pretty much always good. Even like a grocery store one is gonna be good.
Yeah,
Pumpkin is a good food too. You don't have to eat it in a pie. You can just scoop out a pumpkin and do a million things with it, and it's really good for you too.
seeds
But
are.
making a pumpkin pie from an actual pumpkin is also a huge pain in the ass because you have to like really cook it.
That's
You have to,
I
like,
think
cook all
that's
the
the
water
main
out
thing,
of it.
that it's like it's a great deal of work for somewhat negligible benefit.
I'm just saying you shouldn't say it's negligible benefits if you haven't had one.
Mm.
Because I disagree, but it is a huge pain in the ass.
Well, the apple pie was very easy to make comparatively, so
Yeah, just stick with the apple. That shit is fucking good.
I'm in a strange place in my life where I only cook meat. Anne wants to
Period.
cook everything else, but she won't cook the meat, so I just come in and cook the meat for 10 minutes, and that's my part. That's the only part my contribution to dinner.
Traditional gender roles in cooking.
I know,
Yeah,
isn't it weird?
Yeah.
I don't cook meat either, but I just like cooking all of it.
I mean, I'm happy to cook meat. I think meat is beautiful.
Last night I made from scratch General Tso's seitan with rice and broccoli.
Nice.
It was really amazing. It was one of the best things I've made in a while. It's really good.
Connor,
Wow.
speaking of meat that is beautiful, I need to share this. You ever heard of the meat-shaped stone?
Meat-shaped stone. No.
Yeah. It is a Taiwanese work of art that is a jasper that is carved into the shape of a piece of pork, and
Cool.
it is very, very popular in Taiwan. It's like the most popular thing at the National Palace Museum, and it is straight up just a rock that looks like a piece of pork, and it's very
Well, I'm going to check that out.
meat-shaped stone.
Meat-shaped stone.
Yeah, that's its official name. Also.
Isn't that a Nirvana song?
Um,
I'm
I
going
have
to
to
sing
be-
that for the rest of the week.
I have to pee, so I'm gonna go. But
2 weeks.
Bye, you.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
That's
Yep.
like something like the 17th or 16th.
That would be the 17th.
Yep.
That's
Yep,
the day before
spurs.
Luther King Day. I don't know if that's a long weekend for me or not.
would that mean you wouldn't want to do it on that?
No, this would be a nice part of a long weekend, I guess.
The next time we meet, I'll be 40.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm the
Cool.
oldest one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't be 40 until the fall.
You know, you're the
Olivia-
oldest, Connor, but I'm catching up.
Olivia just turned 40.
It's weird. It's striking me oddly.
Yeah, yeah.
It means you're just
You start to see
cooler
your
now.
life differently.
Yeah.
I got so psyched when Harold Budd died, and I heard that his albums all started coming after he was 40.
Yeah.
Well, you put out a bunch of albums before 40.
Did I?
Yes?
Yeah.
Counterpoint.
It's like a million albums. Can't keep them straight.
I don't know. I like here. You know, the story that you can buy is always the same. Is the genius who was born. It's difficult to get stories that are the other way.
So
I
you're
think public school was just
story of being a teenager who somehow ended up with a rap career?
Yeah, I mean those are a dime a dozen. Like, and the dude who makes his like experimental piano albums starting at age 40, that's a story everyone can be inspired by. Anyone who's not like a asshole 17-year-old can't really learn anything from the rapper kid.
Speaking of age, how old is Mr. Wolfe when he's writing this?
I'm figuring it out.
60s, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, he came into it pretty late.
He's
Well,
got to
you-
be.
Good, like
I mean,
that fucking in the Tolkien essay, he was talking about how he was reading that like in his late 20s, I think, right when
Yeah.
it came out.
62 when the first book is published in Long Sun.
He's 62.
1993 is the first published of the Nightside is published in 1993. He's 62 that year.
Yep.
What a decade the 90s were.
And I miss him.
You had Nirvana. You had the Book of the Long Sun. Bill
Wasted.
Clinton. Great.
Wu-Tang Clan.
Octavia Butler. Still popular.
Flannel.
Ska.
Carousel.
Aphex Twin.
Hey,
Because some people
Seinfeld.
are saying good things about the 90s.
Boys to Men.
ABC BBD. The whole East Coast family.
Bill Clinton.
I already said Bill Clinton.
Oh, you
Bill
did.
Clinton.
Vince Foster.
God bless him.
Oh yeah, the best
The
president.
best president we've ever had.
the greatest.
The president that made us all into philosophers as we pondered the definition of is.
Yeah, what a
It
fucking
depends on what your definition of is. What a
I
guy.
cannot feel like Bill fucking Clinton. Okay, I have to.
All right.
I wish I had a t-shirt of Kenneth Starr, special prosecutor, trying to catch Bill Clinton in a net and failing.
It is kind of incredible that they weren't able.
He's Slick Willie.
Fucking normal. It's totally normal.
It is. I mean, Donald Trump is a case in point of an obvious criminal who nobody can catch.
You arrest the one bad one, you might come for the second most bad one, and that's not okay.
Well, it's also difficult when you profit from that criminal's criminality.
So a lot of people have been doing. It's been them TV media eating fat for the last time in their existence.
Well, we'll see about that.
All downhill from here for them. They'll be replaced by some 16-year-olds on TikTok. Will soon be where we get all of our news from.
That is true.
Well, I'm going to go watch TikTok then. I'm going to get a jump on the game.
Well, I ask that you just consider watching the new DuckTales. It's really good.
Is there any voices in it of people I know? Oh, wait. Catherine Tate is a voice on it.
I believe that. There's a lot of voices of people that you know.
I'll dig that.
The girl from Garfunkel and Oates is Abigail.
And Danny Pudi,
Who's that?
he was in Community, played Abed.
Never seen that one.
Oh, and Scrooge McDuck is Doctor Who.
Yeah, Doctor Who.
Which one?
David Tennant, the Scottish one.
The one from Broadchurch.
Cool.
The one from Scotland.
Doctor.
But anyways, it's really good. They're including all the Disney Afternoon in it. I just watched a thing where they discover an ancient medieval concoction that allowed them to bounce around every place. It was gummy bears.
I read about how they tied in Darkwing Duck.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
It's an interesting treatment of the Disney Afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh, are they doing like a Watchmen on the Disney Afternoon?
Oh my god.
Whoa.
The Disney Afternoon is honestly like one of the best things that's ever happened.
It's really cool.
It's so good.
Well, and like, there's an interesting complex familial relationship between Donald and Uncle Scrooge, and like Webigail is obsessed with studying the McDuck family, so they get really into weird family relationships. It's a fun show.
Michael
Have you
Chiklis.
read any of the Karl Barks comics?
Yeah, I think the Karl Barks is amazing.
Yeah, they're very good. All right. Well, I'm gonna go eat something.
What are you gonna try to eat?
I'm gonna eat Korean steamed buns.
Sexy.
Yeah, but the call's gonna end because I'm leaving. So bye, everybody.
We'll see what happens.